Hello, and welcome back to another exciting episode of our premiere podcast. The premiere in my context here, I'm using it to mean it's like the top of show. It's like the highest quality podcast that can be produced.
Oh, okay.
Because I think all of our viewers can agree that our podcast is nothing but the highest quality,
The
finest production in the land.
Have you heard that Geist episode?
We got one negative comment about the Geist episode.
We've never had to let it down. It's not even one on YouTube. It was from like a friend of ours.
Yeah, from a dear friend who came to us in our houses to tell us that our episode sucked.
We love you very much, our dear friend. You know who you are, and maybe we'll do Dragon's Dogma in your honor.
Yeah, when you die.
When he dies?
Yeah, we'll do it in his honor.
Oh no, I don't want
7
that.
years.
Listen, if I was going to find out that my dear friend who
Will remain nameless.
Yeah, if I found out he was going to die, I would try to find some way to go back and prevent it happen. I would try and create some kind of machine that would let me travel through time.
You see, that's really admirable. I would just play Dragon's Dogma.
Like, when you go back in time, or just
Generally, I wouldn't even do the time thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I guess memory of him would live on.
The memory would live on. Just like Connor, the memory of TimeSplitters lives on in our hearts.
It does. It does. This is one that is very close and special to us. I feel like anyone who recognizes this name is going to have a similar thing where they're going to go, oh, I remember this. Yes.
You were all children when we were children, so...
Yeah, I presume so.
TimeSplitters is a big part of your lives as it was as ours, I presume.
Yeah. And this is one I'm quite keen to talk about.
Is this the first... I was going to say, is this the first shooter? And then I was like, no, we did RE4. And then I was like, is it the first is it the first person shooter? No, we did Geist. Is it the first good first person shooter we're going to talk about?
Is it the first Xbox game?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it is the first Xbox game.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the fun thing as well, is that when I actually think about it, I joked about the Geist episode, but like I feel like at this point, Geist is the only game we're unanimously negatively about.
That's true. This
is going to be
not that there's not more games that we will both dislike. In fact, the next game we're going to talk about is a game that we both dislike, but we'll leave that for later.
Yes,
yeah,
that'll be fun.
For you.
No, this is the complete inverse of Geist. This is one that's from around about the same era, actually predates it.
2002, I believe.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think when we talked about Geist, I kind of claimed that it had the kind of DNA of this sort of game, but it is a little bit more Halo-y. This is very much, though, GoldenEye's successor.
Yeah, this is that classic FPS lineage, that classic Rare shooter being brought into the next generation.
Yeah, same folks, not Rare, but like same folks
people who worked at Rare, who then went on to form FreeRadical, the producers of this lovely game.
Yes, oh man, there's a lot to say about FreeRadical, especially given recent news. But let's, instead of starting with the future, let us start with the past. So, how do we start things off with TimeSplitters? Because
I'll ask you this question, because I'm kind of curious about this. What can you tell me about TimeSplitters 1?
I know that it was the prequel to TimeSplitters 2.
Very good.
Yeah. And given that TimeSplitters 2 was the game that was around me when I was younger, never felt much of a need to touch the original, which is very odd for games. I think as a kid, I had like Spyro 3 before any of the others, but I wanted to get the others.
Yeah.
Same thing with like Dawn of War. I started out with Winter Assault, and then I played the original one afterwards. Like
for me, it's the same with like Silent Hill or Resident Evil. I want to go out and seek out the first entries in those series to understand where they came from, so on and so forth. Not the same with TimeSplitters, though.
Yeah. Never had a hankering of that with TimeSplitters.
A very appropriate way to feel, because the reason why I'm asking you this question is because TimeSplitters 1 is a very interesting game. It's actually a PlayStation 2 launch game. At the very launch of the PlayStation 2, you could buy TimeSplitters 1. So TimeSplitters 1 is more of like not like a tech demo, but it's more of a proof of concept than it is a full game. And the reviews at the time reflected that. It was very much criticized for not having too much to do outside of multiplayer. So it kind of feels like TimeSplitters 2 for a lot of people is really the actual start of the series, because they had all those elements in place, because they had proved themselves with a game that was successful.
That's completely fair. I mean, I suppose the comparison I will make, even if it's not quite as apt, is whenever people talk about Star Wars Battlefront, they are almost always talking about 2.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. Despite the fact that Star Wars Battlefront 1 is still perfectly fine, it's actually very good. It has things in it that 2 doesn't have.
Yeah.
But whenever people talk about those games, talk about wanting to play those games, they always want to jump into 2.
Right, into 2. I mean, it's that way with multiplayer shooters, right? You want to have the newest and the most up-to-date thing.
Yeah, I mean, when people want to play Halo multiplayer, they don't start with 1.
No one plays Halo 1 anymore.
No, I do.
So to get back to our little story, so TimeSplitters 2 is the sequel to TimeSplitters 1. Congratulations for figuring that one out. And it's kind of like the quasi-soft start of this TimeSplitters series. It's a much more well regarded and much more remembered game, basically.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, being a PlayStation 2 launch game, it was going to succeed. It would have had the money behind it to then turn it into something proper. It doesn't happen with everything. Oh, had a thought.
Oh, yeah?
Isn't this what happened with Red Steel? Where Red Steel 1...
yeah, I guess, yeah.
Although people didn't care so much for Red Steel 2. That's kind of the difference here.
Red Steel 2 kind of like turbo bombed. Like that game exploded. I was thinking a bit like Super Bomberman R, which was a Switch launch game and was propelled to success off the back of that. And then they made a second one and no one gave a shit because it wasn't a Switch launch game, so... So, TimeSplitters 2.
Yeah, this is the tangent podcast. This is our notes are split.
Well, this is actually a good way to segue into another tangent, which is that I believe the reason why we're doing so much dancing and pirouetting around TimeSplitters 2 is that this game is quote-unquote special to both of us, I would say.
Yeah.
It featured quite heavily in both of our childhoods. I owned a copy of TimeSplitters 2. You owned a copy of TimeSplitters 2.
Yeah.
We all have very treasured and precious memories of it. And it kind of, to us, or to me at the very least, represents a very particular and a very nostalgic time for me, I suppose. Like, the early childhood, the first game consoles that you owned, playing games with your friends or with your siblings, stuff like that. Like, TimeSplitters, to me, means a lot of different things beyond even what it is as a game. And it represents so much about an era of games that has now long since passed that I have a lot to talk about with it.
Yeah, it's an era that I yearn for. I've always considered the games from this period of time to be my kind of gold standard for things to actually do with them.
Yeah.
I think that rings true here. Like, this is one of the best examples of it when we go into the multiplayer and about all the additional stuff you can do with it.
Yeah.
Like, another one that's my example is the previously mentioned Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Exactly. Or for me, Turok Evolution.
Oh, yeah, that's actually...
I had a refined childhood. Only the finest tastes were available to me.
Listen, I had Legend of K.
Yeah, and we played that.
We played that and we're still not talking about it. People are going to think that we hate Legend of K.
It's coming, don't you worry. It's in the docket.
Yeah, but
the people are crying out for the Legend of K to be told.
I want people, when they tune into the podcast, to ask, where is Legend of K? That's what I want.
Disappointed it's not come up thus far.
I know, yeah. The one person with a little flag, little foam finger.
What?
Yeah.
TimeSplitters 2.
We need to get on to time.
Yeah. All right, Connor, tell me the premise of TimeSplitters 2.
TimeSplitters 2 is a game about these two time travelers from the future who are currently fighting believe it is a robot uprising, right? Like an AI?
No, they're fighting against aliens.
Aliens! It's one of the two. There was one of the future levels just blurred in my mind to me.
No, they're fighting against a horde of evil time-traveling aliens called the Time Bandits. The Time Stealers.
What this really
They
shows...
might be called the TimeSplitters. They might be the titular TimeSplitters.
Okay, because the Time Bandits is a different film.
The Time Bandits is a very different film, but yeah. So basically they're kind of like near future space tech, a bit like a lot like Halo, I'm being honest, with the actual parts of the story, where it's these two soldiers, a man and a woman, Sergeant Cortex and the other one.
Cortez.
Cortez.
Yeah, Cortex is, of course, Crash Bandicoot.
Right, I'm getting mumbled now as well. What happens is they're essentially leading a raid against one of the aliens' motherships.
Yeah.
And what they're discovering is that the TimeSplitters are using their ability to time travel to go back into pivotal points of human history so that they can mess with them, thus disrupting humanity's progress and removing them as a threat to them, basically. Yeah. So it's up to you and a friend, if you so wish, to go through all of these different time portals, going to different levels throughout human history and putting a stop to the TimeSplitters' nefarious and horrible crimes.
Yeah, which tends to be... It isn't so much a case of fighting aliens for the most part. It's mainly fighting against an assortment of different foes.
It's really weird because what the general structure of the story is that when you arrive in each location, your body will change to be someone from that time period.
Yeah.
But you also seem to be following their actions as well. Like, you're resolving their plot lines. Like, so, for instance, in the Siberia level, you are playing as a spy trying to infiltrate this base.
Yeah.
And you're still doing all the things that a spy would be expected to do, like destroying files and killing enemies and stuff like that. But also there's this little side narrative where you have to collect the time crystal from the TimeSplitters. And, like, that's so not a part of the actual levels. Which kind of leads me on to my first point about this game's structure, which is that the story doesn't matter at all.
No, it doesn't. Well, listen, I forgot that this was about aliens.
Yeah.
Because of how many of the missions are just about fighting random dudes.
They just wanted to have a game where you go to a bunch of different like time zones and do wacky, crazy time travel stuff. The story is so perfunctory to that. Like, it does not matter at all.
Yeah, it really doesn't. I do kind of like it. I like you have to go and collect the fucking time crystals and all of this shit.
Well, that's the thing that's interesting about it to me, is that they're very much writing a story in reverse, because they made TimeSplitters 1, which is a game where you play as a massive selection of random enemies and variants, so you can be like a monkey or a robot or like a jester and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then when they were tasked with making TimeSplitters 2, it was like, okay, now make a story around this. And they went, oh god, how do we connect together all these disparate elements?
We literally write down the first thing we can think of, because that's not our focus.
Exactly,
we're not here to tell Metal Gear Solid.
No, the story is just an excuse for the action. Like, when they were asked to make connective tissue, they complied, but they didn't put much thought into it.
Yeah. Which I don't really mind so much. What it means is that this game is able to just really flourish in terms of being its own thing, just wear a ton of hats.
Yeah, no game really has the kind of vibe or style that TimeSplitters has. It's entirely unique in the stuff that it's trying to do.
The closest approximation I can think to our modern day of a game that has such an eclectic mix of different peoples from different times and different weapons all mashed up together is something like Fortnite, where the only reason that's happening is because money.
See, I was kind of thinking maybe like Overwatch.
That's a good point.
Because it's all about combining different cultures and their different traditions, but it's not quite as stark and as zany as TimeSplitters is.
Overwatch at least writes one paragraph about why those characters are in there. I mean, it's not a backstory, but it's something.
But it is a paragraph.
Yeah, and it's at least an excuse for them to be in the same time period. Whereas I'm thinking MOBA's a good comparison, though, because something like... I don't want to say something like League of Legends or Dota, because they also think about these things in terms of their own fiction. Like League of Legends is
Dead Island Epidemic.
Dead Island Epidemic. We don't even need to verify that. No one can. It's even.
You've still got that beta key in your Steam library.
I do. Never even tried it. I just didn't care.
No one did.
Listen, you're combining Dead Island with MOBAs. Those are two things that I just never touch.
It's two great tastes that aren't great together.
No. People like MOBAs. I'm one of those people that really just didn't get on with them.
Either of us care for them.
No.
But the point is that TimeSplitters has a very distinct visual and kind of structural identity. The multiplayer concerns so many different kinds of enemies and locations and weapon types and styles and atmospheres that it's kind of... It beggars belief that they were able to actually combine those elements into one cohesive whole, but yet somehow it all works with a kind of cartoony art style that it all has.
Yeah, I think it's because it's so focused on just being a fun little thing. It's because let's think about it from the perspective of like the common person who this was the era where gaming was hitting the mainstream rather than just being seen as like a toy, right?
Yeah.
Because even into the 90s where that was expanding with the PlayStation, it was still ultimately, you know.
I mean, you've got to think, what are the mega smash hits of that era that we all know as the defining games of that time? It's like Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
Those are not mainstream games. Those are mainstream for the 90s games.
Yeah. And like Nintendo stuff as well.
Yeah.
But
Hybrid Heaven.
Yeah. But this is a point in time where, you know, people who wanted to play games like Grand Theft Auto or Halo or anything like
Jak 2.
Medal of Honor, I guess.
Jak 2.
Yeah, Jak 2.
Jak 2.
Did Jak 2 do well?
Probably, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, fair.
Well enough. They made Jak 3.
Probably got a platinum. Yeah. But the average person at that time was just like, all right, I'm a dude, bro. I've turned 18. I'm having beers. I'm watching football.
Yeah.
You can clearly tell I don't know how people work. I'm gonna
every man.
I'm gonna play a video game. What is a video game? What am I going to be playing?
See, if they're really a British person in the early 2000s, they'll be like, I'm gonna play a computer game.
Oh yes, on my Commodore.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to plug that in and play.
They haven't got Fantasy World Dizzy, so I'll have to make do with TimeSplitters.
I'm still waiting for Football Manager to be invented. But yeah,
that was a dark time for us as a culture. What's fun about TimeSplitters 2 is that it has so much style and swagger and grace. Like, it's so bursting at the seams with energy and unique elements and creativity that it's kind of mind-boggling to imagine a game with all these different things going on. Like, like I said, the cast of playable characters includes lots of soldiers and women.
Yeah, there's women in it.
But also there's robots and monkeys and like 1800s jesters and stuff like that. Like, it's really trying to bring together a whole lot of different styles in a way that's really impressive.
I feel like if you pitched the concept of this game to someone in the middle of the 2010s where people were getting sick of random humor on the internet and you went, here's a game, it's about time travel and it has all these things in it, people would assume it would be like a lol random meme game and wouldn't even want to touch it. They'd just be like, ugh. But this was at a time where you could make things like this just for fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And
the cost of game development was so low that you could get away with it, I suppose.
You could. It seemed to be a heck of a lot easier to just kind of model and texture all of these things and throw them out there.
Well, the discussion about this game's eclectic and kind of inconsistent visual style, it kind of made me wonder if this game could only truly exist in that era. And what I mean by that is not necessarily that it means that games are cheaper to make, so you could make things like that, but also I wonder if that kind of visual style only really works in a low fidelity pre-HD era, where if you tried to make a bunch of really high resolution models that were really like not realistic but really well detailed and had them running around, would that seem like discordant and a bit jumbled and a bit directionless in the modern context?
It's a very good question, although I think I would posit two responses to that.
Ooh, two.
One of which being Team Fortress 2. Where one of the main reasons that hasn't really aged at all is because of its art style.
Yeah, I just think those characters are more cohesive, though. They're all from the same world and the same time.
True.
Yeah. I mean, because like if you had like a modern monkey and then like the soldiers from this game and like the cave woman and all those characters, would it seem odd in a modern HD game? It feels like it would be hard to make that look cohesive.
I mean, quite possibly, but I think you can do enough of a level of art direction to do it, because I think what makes these so distinct and different, because there's still these general principles of like how the bodies are shaped and how sort of like the way everyone's proportioned that still gives them some uniformity even when they're radically different. Because the other thing I was going to posit to you is Fortnite's still going.
Yeah.
It's not
I guess my retort to that is that I don't think Fortnite is visually cohesive.
Well, no, it isn't.
Yeah.
But
I'm saying, could you make a game like that is cohesive? Like, it looks good and like all those elements belong with one another.
That's the thing. I think there's an argument to be said that Fortnite is cohesive, but I would agree with you that I don't think it looks good.
Let's shake on it.
But yeah, I think I'm in complete agreement with you that this is a game that's just trying to have fun with itself.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one that's throwing a bunch of elements together in utter confidence, and it's something that, because the people that made this game, they made GoldenEye. They understand that you can make a compelling multiplayer game that has a bunch of discordant elements that might not even be massively balanced, but people can still jump in with.
Yeah.
Like, think about how something like GoldenEye has the casts of characters from all the James Bond games. Some of them are characters like Oddjob that are notoriously overpowered because of their stature being hard to hit.
But that's what makes it have flavor, you know? That's what makes it more unique.
Yeah, I mean, this game's got the monkey in it.
Yeah.
It's a tiny guy. Like it probably helps that this game controls a little bit better, but it's still one of those cases where like, you know what? Fine, screw it. It's fun. You can make games like this. I wish you could still make games like this.
I kind of get the sense that the people who worked on the multiplayer suites for those games they felt chafed by the constraints of the James Bond license, and two, the futuristic super spy aesthetic of Perfect Dark. And they just said, we want to make that multiplayer game, but there's no restrictions on our creativity. We can do whatever we want with the visuals and the characters.
Yeah.
There's no need to have cohesion. We can do everything because of this time travel plot.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. I guess another one in terms of the visual cohesion argument, which might have the same response, is Smash Brothers. Like, everyone there looks different.
I think Smash Brothers looks good. I don't think it has any visual cohesion.
No, when you have Bayonetta next to Mario, it's very much...
It gets away with it because it's doing it with such confidence, but it doesn't look right when you think about what you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, you think about what the Smash Brothers aesthetic is, like whenever they have like a neutral stage, and they don't know what to do.
It's not ideal.
But yeah,
is the neutral TimeSplitters aesthetic just the futuristic alien stuff from the main campaign?
I think it is because it's the most common. I mean, they try to split up a lot of the future levels by
time split up a lot of the future levels.
Yeah, but quite literally, because they'll try to set them like a couple hundred years apart from one another. Yeah. But the problem is that they still go with this very grungy industrial aesthetic. Like the one where you are a robot and you're going after like the chosen child, I think it's called.
The machine child.
Yeah.
I hate the machine child.
It doesn't feel that much different from like the ones where you're playing as Cortez. Just because of the way that...
I guess it makes the world feel more... what's the word? Consistent, right? Because it's like if you're getting close to the actual time that you're playing in the modern stuff or the contemporary stuff, the fact that you're so close means it looks similar, makes that world feel cohesive, you know? Because it's like, oh, we're getting to the point where we are now. Yeah, like you can see that development going, which I find interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Although I will say the UFO level where it's a bunch of like radio serial dramas where you're playing as that guy in the big red spacesuit who looks like that doesn't seem like the same future as the other stuff.
That's the effects of the time splitting.
Oh yeah,
maybe at some point the Fallout thing happened where just everyone's stuck with the 50s aesthetic.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, the game raises those questions, but it has no interest in answering them.
No,
and I have no interest in having them answered. That's not really the point.
Because it just goes anyway.
You're in the Wild West.
Yeah, you're in the Wild West. You're in Chicago. Yeah. You're in the Notre Dame Cathedral, because something that we're kind of talking about, but not in full detail, is about how the multiplayer and single player kind of feed into each other. Yeah. I was curious if you wanted to talk about that.
So I've kind of touched upon it with my comments about the game's single player seeming to be just an excuse to weave together all of its different styles. But what I find really fascinating about this game is that it's someone being given a multiplayer game and thinking about how the single player can be formed from those elements. And what that means is that in a way, the single player feels like it's informed by the multiplayer, and then so on and so forth, and then vice versa.
Yeah.
Where the single player, even though they are levels you're playing with either yourself or a friend, they kind of have the same feel as the multiplayer. The way you fight bots, for instance, because there are bots in the multiplayer, and they have the same AI as the single player enemies do, and it's like, because all the levels are all just like based on the multiplayer maps, it kind of feels like the single player is formed from the discordant, chaotic energy of the multiplayer. They don't feel like two separate wholes. They feel like one cohesive thing joined together that feels very consistent with one another, you know?
Yeah, I will say that especially when games had to be released in such short spans of times like this, because as much as I feel like I want to correct myself in an earlier statement where I said the game development might have seemed easier at this point in time. It wasn't easier, it was just quicker.
It was quicker,
yeah. It was quicker and cheaper. Because, I mean, heck, nowadays you have things like Unreal Engine that has visual coding. That's infinitely easier to do.
I guess the way to put it is that there were less people, but they were working just as hard.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it, because crunch was still a problem back then. But I will say that I don't really mind so much if games are built around their multiplayer element feeding into their single player, so long as that multiplayer element has these non-playable characters where you can do this. Because I'll bring up Battlefront for the third time today. I think third time? I've lost track. Star Wars Battlefront's campaign is also all on multiplayer maps. It's full of bots.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, the bots will just be fighting the same way that they do in multiplayer. You might just have a slightly different objective, but you'll be traversing the same environments with roughly the same focus anyway. The only difference might be is that, suddenly you're the Empire and you're fighting Geonosians. You'd never do that in the...
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts. And TimeSplitters doing that is not really much of an issue to me at all. In fact,
I'm not leveling that as a criticism.
No.
I actually find that very impressive about the game, is that it feels so complete as a product. Like the single player and the multiplayer feel like they're in perfect harmony with one another.
Yeah. And I think that's great. That's something really to strive for in a game, is to have that synthesis. Because how many games have you played where it feels like the single player and multiplayer are just entirely different?
Oh, I feel like every game released during the Xbox 360 generation, right? Where it's like, here's the Tomb Raider multiplayer, and I'm just like, okay.
Oh, yeah. It's when we consider the visual style, the big meshing of time elements and all of the aesthetics and everything that it goes for, this game has an incredibly distinct identity of its own, I would say.
It's never been replicated since.
No, which on the one hand, I kind of see as an almost level of respect that TimeSplitters can be just a completely unique diamond among a sea of other jewels. But on the other hand, it is a little bit of a shame that you don't get something jumping out to be another TimeSplitters.
Yeah, like people who like this kind of game haven't been served for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, GoldenEye had gotten reboots and sequels and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which TimeSplitters didn't really after Future Perfect. TimeSplitters 4 was being worked on.
Yeah. So TimeSplitters 4 is a bit of a long story where it was being worked on and then cancelled and then rebooted and then restarted 7 different times over the course of 10 years.
Yeah.
Actually, now with the thing that happened recently over the course of 20 years.
Oh, God.
Yeah, because there was one more game in the series after this, which was called TimeSplitters Future Perfect, which I've also never played. But after that, just completely that. The 360 era had begun, HD development was here. No one was willing to take a risk on a zany multiplayer-focused shooter like that.
No, that was...
Unless you were Monday Night Combat, I guess.
It's an odd thing. Some risks would get taken, but like it would
just not that one for those people. I suppose they got to make Haze.
For
the PlayStation 3.
Oh yes. Oh.
And that did not go well.
No, not in the slightest. I have to say, I'm kind of glad I got an Xbox 360 at that point in time.
Yeah. You didn't want to play Lair?
I didn't want to.
Oh, Genji, Way of the Blade, or whatever it was called.
Was that the crab one?
I think so. I think that was the crab one. Yeah.
All right. Now, there's one thing that I do want to like really latch onto when it comes to talking about this game. The fucking main menu music is just...
Oh, yeah. That's so good. It's like burnt into my brain.
It is. It's probably... I think to someone that doesn't have an attachment to this game, it's probably not that profound, but there's something so wonderful about just loading in, and it just starts.
Yeah, so we wanted to do we didn't actually play very much of this game preceding the podcast. I think you did some of your own gameplay prior to me, right?
I mainly played multiplayer, but like for the record, we did the entire campaign, but we did that about a year ago.
So when we do these episodes, usually we like to play like an hour or so of the game beforehand to refresh our memories. But in this instance, we only played like one multiplayer game, and we thought that was enough.
Yeah.
But we also booted the game, and it just goes straight in. There's no like company logos or anything. It's just straight into the options, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean that's mainly because I just feel like this is one of those games where I don't need to have that much of a refresher. Like this is the game I've seen enough of. Like TimeSplitters is a fairly open and shut case a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is perceived to be, I suppose.
But in terms of the music, just like
because that main menu music is the one that's like
if this video doesn't start out with that music, then
we've done something wrong.
Then that's a sign that something's wrong, and Thunder is no longer in charge of the podcast. And
I am in charge now, baby. Every opening will be Precious Huey. Let's go.
Just on April Fools, we re-upload every episode with Precious Huey
is the opening, exactly, but that's one of the things that's really exciting about the music to me, is that it's one of the many tools that the game uses to make all of its different elements work together. Because all the music is obviously very much designed to fit the time period that you're playing in. So for instance, in the Neo Tokyo level, it's this real science fiction, like synthesized music. In the Siberia level, it's a lot of like old style synth from like spy films and like little like stingers and stuff like that.
That is when I feel the GoldenEye influence at its most. It really reminds me of Damn, as well as like a little bit of some of the GameCube GoldenEyes as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's just like a really diverse and varied score that suits all the different moods quite well. Like I really like the nightclub music from the Chicago level, which is that that's into my brain as well.
That's probably going to be outro.
Oh, fantastic! I'll look forward to it.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is that they're all from these different time periods and they go for different moods, but it's a big medley. It's a big smorgasbord of sound, just in the same way.
They hit all those notes perfectly. Like they all sound consistent and genuine to what they're trying to achieve. It doesn't feel forced. That composer just really did all the work to make that music sound consistent.
They really do. I mean, I kind of admire a lot of what this team was doing in terms of just making this stuff.
Yeah.
I suppose under like a more kind of like scrutinous lens, it's not like it's necessarily a big landmark, hallmark, revolutionary thing. Like they haven't made like this big transformative story or made this big leap in technology. They've just made a really fun thing, and it speaks a lot to my taste in games as well to just be able to do this. Like as I was talking about with Total War, I like that the Warhammer world can be this just mix of aesthetics that all work together into this combined universe, and that's probably shown here with TimeSplitters, is this eclectic mix of so much stuff. And damn, I love the TimeSplitters soundtrack. It's not one I listen to enough, but I put it on definitely. as just something for me to chill with. Takes me back to a better time of playing Virus on Mexican Mission.
No, that's definitely one of those things. The music in this game can really take me back to my youth, which is a long time ago now at this stage, because I'm so old. But like it's so memorable and distinct that it really just pulls me back to a different time period every time I hear it, which is the highest praise you can give music, I think.
Exactly. I guess the theme of this podcast is almost blind love. Because we might not be going into that much thorough details on everything, but we want to make the point across that we fucking love this game.
It's interesting because games like Resident Evil 4 is a game that I have been playing for most of my adult life, basically, at this stage, and I can talk about it in great detail. I can tell you exactly why I like that game. TimeSplitters 2, it's more just like, this game is cool, man. I don't know.
Sometimes that's the case. I mean, when we get to Legend of K, I might be like that. I hope to articulate myself better, but
I'll be articulating myself quite well that episode, if you don't mind.
We will be a yin-yang.
I will be caustic in my takedown of that game, I tell you.
THQ Nordic are going to be quivering in their boots, I think.
That should be what they did to FreeRadical after this.
Okay, honestly, true. Yeah, again.
They had it coming.
Again, we get to that. I'm sorry to remind you this a second time. But yeah, no, I think that now that we've sort of covered these elements of it, like, we just keep talking about how much we're enjoying playing this. Is it worth just getting into the meat of it?
Yeah, let's talk about the actual gameplay of TimeSplitters 2. TimeSplitters 2 is a first-person shooter.
What?
Yeah.
I thought it was a turn-based strategy game.
No, that was the last game.
Oh.
Yeah. This is the one with the monkey.
Oh!
Yeah.
Donkey Kong!
Oh, we haven't played Donkey Kong yet. That's coming. That's forthcoming.
All right.
Yeah, so what we want to talk about now is basically the meat and potatoes of TimeSplitters 2, the kind of beating core that makes up that brings together all those elements, which is the actual shooting and the levels and stuff like that. So where do we want to start?
It's a fantastic question. I think for starters, because I keep bringing it up, we'll talk about that GoldenEye DNA.
Yes.
For anyone that's familiar with GoldenEye, that was a first-person shooter designed on the console that had one stick on it.
You kids see the N64 controller? Imagine making a game for that thing. You'll know where we're coming from.
Yeah, so as a result of that, the kind of the sort of gunplay of that kind of thing was that you would kind of pivot your gun sort of around the screen, almost a little bit like having one of those arcade sort of light gun games where the gun is sort of like on a pivot. It's like almost like a gun attached to a giant joystick.
Yeah,
that you have
like
to
it will
move
always
around.
return to the center of the screen no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. So you have to kind of have to use like the shoulder buttons to kind of like strafe and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's almost tank control-y in a way in terms of your sort of left and right.
I'm so intrigued right now.
Yeah, we get back on the GoldenEye.
Yeah.
I've got a NTSC copy. Like,
all right, now we need to show off your 7 N64s that you have.
No,
spare some for the children, Connor. Come now.
All right, I'll donate an NTSC N64 to the Children's Hospital.
Excellent.
And
they won't be able to plug it in.
No, they won't.
Yeah.
I'll keep the adapter for my own purposes. But
I think what's most important about this game's controls is that it has, I'm going to call it iron sights aiming, but it's not iron sights aiming. What it is that if you hold down, I think it's the left trigger or one of the triggers, a crosshairs will appear.
Yeah.
Because there's not a crosshairs over the usual gun.
No.
Which makes it very difficult to precision aim if you're not holding down that button.
I mean, it gives me that fire from the hip sort of like craziness when you're not doing that.
That fire from the hip craziness, man. He's so much fun at buys, let me tell you. When he fires from the hip, crazy.
Yeah, that's
what we call the fires from the hip, Connor. When he psychs that thunder.
Dude. This is why you've gotten away with not having a username or not revealing one.
Yeah.
Which I can't clap back like a thunderclap.
Damn, son.
There we go.
Best
this is somehow going to make it onto the best of, despite the fact it's not
That's
funny.
That's a damning indictment of us. This does not bode well.
But that's a good point, actually. I completely forgot about the iron sightsy thing in terms of that.
So it's weird because some guns that do have sights, you can zoom in with them, but you have to like click in the one of the sticks to do it.
Yeah.
And it just creates this you immediately go into like a completely covered Halo 1 looking scope view, basically. But all guns do have that precision aiming mode, which is very, very helpful. We were using that the entire time we were playing.
Yeah, we were, especially when sometimes precision is key, and a lot of the TimeSplitters weapons are very much not precision weapons.
Yeah.
I think my main memories of playing TimeSplitters, whether it be with a handgun or with a rocket launcher or an automatic weapon, is just fire at anything that moves, sod it, just get them out of my way.
Well, the way that I remember most combat encounters or the kind of cadence of the campaign for us was that we would go into every encounter trying to hip fire. We'd be like, all right, we're just going to run and gun, shoot these guys down, whatever, that'll be it. And then we would go in there and just miss every single shot and just sit there trying to fire one pistol shot into one enemy and missing every single shot and then just getting killed by them and being like, all right, fine, we'll do the fucking precision aiming, whatever, for fuck's sake. And then you just stand there slowly trying to nudge the stick in its very oversensitive manner, trying to get it to go over a single guy's head. And you'd be like, all right, come on, please.
Please. But one benefit to this that is a bit of an upgrade from like the GoldenEye things is that, hey, guess what? The Xbox and PlayStation 2 and even the GameCube controllers, they've got 2 sticks on them. So it's more of that twin stick aiming.
The GameCube's more 1.5.
Oh, okay, that's true.
What did we play this on?
Okay, so it's funny. I think we did actually play this on the GameCube.
Ah.
Yeah, it's why we don't have our save file at the moment, because the version that we played just to sort of refresh ourselves was the Xbox original version.
Okay.
Just to kind of compare that to.
Yeah, I think we were originally playing, and I don't want to incriminate us here, but we might have been playing a pirated copy of TimeSplitters 2.
That was a pirated copy of TimeSplitters 2? I think it
was on my Magic Wii that you can play anything on.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I believe that's what the context was. Don't tell anyone. Shh, listeners, don't you fucking rat us out.
Don't you fucking do it. We already have enough bad beef with Reggie.
He's coming for us.
When he comes for us.
Dude, when he learns that we pirated Tulip, he's going to be furious.
Wait till he learns that he doesn't even work at Nintendo anymore. It's
going to be a bad day for him.
But yeah, it's but I guess other than that, in terms of the general gameplay mechanics, a lot of TimeSplitters sort of traversal and map design and everything like that, it's very much the arena shooter formula of having these big open maps with verticality in them, usually in the forms of like buildings and elevators and like ramps and stairs and that kind of thing.
Tunnels and things.
Yeah, like a lot of these winding maps with very tight corridors and open spaces, where a lot of your weapon pickups are just sort of like floating around.
And there's a very zany and fun selection of weapons, ranging from Tommy guns to laser cannons to miniguns and all sorts of fun things like that.
Yeah, all to reflect these different time periods. And the thing is that they never feel, for the most part, they don't feel like any of them aren't viable.
Yeah.
Unless there's some real stinkers that I'm forgetting about. I'm certain that there's some
I always think about the sci-fi plasma pistol, where the point is that the bullets are meant to ricochet, but it just feels like it never actually hits the target that you're trying to shoot at. Because the whole point is that you'll shoot a shot and then it will ricochet around and hit them multiple times, but it just never seems to actually land on them.
Oh yeah, that's very much a case of them trying to give several weapons that have the same role in the sandbox something unique about each, which a lot of games struggle with that when it comes to their weapon sandboxes. I mean, at this period of time, if I contrast this with something like, say, Halo 1, you usually just have one of each type of weapon, really.
Whereas there's a bit more of a range here, I suppose.
Yeah, like if whether or not you've got the AK-47 or the Tommy gun or the plasma rifle, they're going to be doing a similar role of being automatic.
Yeah.
But
what's your favorite TimeSplitters 2 gun?
So that's a fantastic question, because off the top of my head, just for sheer visceral feedback, I want to say the minigun.
Okay.
And the main reason I do is because it's one of those guns where you have to manage how you fire it.
Yeah, it has an overheat mechanic.
Yeah, a lot of the time when I get that gun, I start kind of tapping the trigger to start winding it up.
If you press the alt fire mode, it will turn on the wind up and keep it turned on.
Excuse me?
Yeah. So every gun has an alt fire, and the miniguns is that it turns a click on the side of it that just keeps the gun spinning, so you can immediately start firing.
Do you know how many times I lost to my brother playing this on my Xbox?
Well, I've just changed your entire life, Connor.
I need to go back in time and inform little Connor. Yeah,
little Connor.
How to do this?
Little Connor on these mean streets.
There's also, in the sort of arena shooter sort of range, there's like power-ups. They normally like speed boosts. You have armor, which is very much a GoldenEye thing that pretty much gives you just an extra health bar.
I mean, in the campaign, the armor is mandatory. Like you need to have the armor to be making it through some of those levels.
Especially when, I mean, even when I play against sort of the bots in multiplayer, there's a lot of the times where it really does become a who's going to shoot first determines who wins this kind of thing.
Definitely.
So in the campaign especially, that's kind of the thing, is we'll talk more about it when we play the campaign, but this is one of those games that could get a little bit frustrating to try and play because of a few missions just being kind of tricky, but...
Oh yeah, I mean, we had to bump the difficulty down. To actually be able to finish the campaign.
We had our hopes of doing the secondary objectives to unlock all the characters. We did not unlock the Time Child.
We made it so far, but we couldn't get the Machine Child.
The Machine Child, that's it. Sorry, it's because he looks like a Neo.
He does look like a little Neo, Yeah, so you have so it's speed, invisibility, armor.
Yeah.
And I think that's one that makes you small.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's an entire game mode that's whole premise is that the better you're doing at it, the bigger your character gets.
Oh, so you're more of a target.
Yeah. Which is a fun way of doing the kind of juggernauty way of doing it. I like that in some games. Like the King of the Hill juggernauty thing has been quite common in Halo, but Halo 4 had a mode called Regicide, where the entire point of it was that the more kills that you got while you were the king, the more points you would be worth when someone eventually killed you. At least I'm pretty sure that's how that worked.
Yeah.
And I liked that mode because I became more of a target the better I was doing, and it was a real like frantic rush to try and escape from the entire map, seeing where I was to get me so that they could win.
It kind of feels like a toy box in a way, where it's just thrown all these different weapons and items into a big thing. Choose your favorite time setting, and then off you go to the races to do a bunch of fun fights. Where none of it's really balanced, say, or like well considered, but it's just so much to do that it becomes fun by that sense.
I feel like it's balanced enough that you can still have a good time casually. I mean, I strongly doubt this is one of those games that has a competitive scene, but it's one where when you put it on and you have other people around, people don't tend to find it's unfair.
Yeah.
They don't tend to think that someone else has the upper hand.
It's more like chaotic.
Yeah.
Like everyone is subject to the same chaos. It's not that you get one weapon and you're the best. It's that like bullshit will happen and you just kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of the gadget stuff, I feel like that's what helps those levels where you're, say, a spy in Siberia or the Atom Crusher level, which is a similar thing. That's what I like about it, is that it gives you those moments where things feel a little bit more espionage-y, and you contrast it with a big bombastic fight that you might have in, say, the Robot Factory. There's the sneaky rescue sections inside of a Notre Dame Cathedral and all this kind of stuff.
Or Neo Tokyo.
Oh, Neo Tokyo. That's one we'll talk about when we get to single player. But you'll probably hear me describe this as just a smorgasbord, a buffet.
A cavalcade.
A lot. And that's kind of because that's the big thing to drive home about TimeSplitters. This has just such a big mix. And
it's a lovely warm broth made by your mother with all the ingredients that you like. There's like carrot in there and onion and all the things that really come together. And it's not an elegant meal, but it damn well fills you up.
Yeah. Well, that's something I want to think about while we're here, is that this is one of those games where we're so familiar with it and we look upon it so fondly that I'd be very curious how someone else responds to this who hasn't had the history. Like, would they be put off from the sheer mix of everything?
I think I've come to believe that we are the last era of people who can enjoy TimeSplitters. I think a combination of its really chaotic tone, its massive jumble of different elements, and also its quite archaic controls would make it difficult for a newcomer to enjoy these games the same way that we would.
They
would just kind of see it as like, oh, I mean, there's a lot of characters, but I don't enjoy playing it so much, so what do I care? Whereas for us, we're like, oh yeah, but it's so much fun though.
I can see potential in a modern TimeSplitters. That's what makes it so tragic about...
Embracer can't.
No, they can't. I mean, listen, they own Legend of K. They managed to get a remake of that out, but where the fuck is TimeSplitters? In the end, there's just a lot to love.
Yeah.
If you're someone who hasn't played TimeSplitters and you're listening to this, I would actually encourage you to give this a go, even though...
Come to our house, we'll do it.
We'll play a little bit three-way, split screen. We'll
bring your own controller, we haven't got free.
I kind of touched upon a little bit about how there's sort of different ways of playing the multiplayer, like there's different modes and things. Do we want to talk a little bit about the highlights of it?
Yeah, let's get into the multiplayer.
Because every one of these multiplayer games for a first-person shooter, they're always going to have a deathmatch, right? Like that's the most common thing.
The default,
yeah. There's very few that don't, or at least don't try to have some in some capacity. And I suppose you'd consider that the default. There's like regular and team and that kind of thing. And I think that's the kind of game that it was weirdly the second most played mode, I think, which isn't very common. A lot of other games, usually that type of style, or the whole point of it is you just have to rack up a number of kills in order to win, to take the top of the scoreboard. Like, normally that's the bread and butter everyone goes for. Like, even in like real-time strategy, like deathmatch, like free-for-all deathmatch is the way that you play games like Dawn of War or Age of Empires or something like that. But the real hidden highlight that you have to unlock in this game is a good old virus.
Well, there's virus and there's fire.
Yes.
Or whatever the fire mode.
Flame tag?
Flame tag, yeah. So they're both similar in concept, but delightfully different in execution. So what they involve by their basics is that one character in the map will be on fire, and it's their objective to spread that fire for different purposes. So in Virus, the fire is green, and once you've infected someone, you remain on fire. And the point is that you have to get everyone else on the map set on fire, and then that will end the game.
Yeah.
With the person who survived the longest winning the game. Whereas Flame Tag is, while you're on fire, you'll be losing points, and you have to spread your flare to someone else to get them to start losing points. So it's about avoiding the person on fire and trying not to be on fire for as least time as possible, basically. Yeah.
It's an interesting inversion of King of the Hill, or to reference Halo again, like Oddball, where you're meant to carry an object to get points, that kind of thing.
It's very funny, because the whole point is that... So this game has bots for which we will sing its praises to the highest of heavens.
Yeah!
Bots are, to me, a mandatory feature of multiplayer games.
They need... I'm very upset that there's going to be 2 entire generations of games that are just going to be unplayable.
Exactly, yeah.
Because you...
That's why Call of Duty Black Ops is the best Call of Duty game, because there's bots.
I think I'd agree.
Yeah.
As much as I want to say that I like something like Modern Warfare 1 more...
Modern Warfare 3 for the Wii.
Oh yeah, Modern Warfare 3 for Wii. What a classic. A game where you can only play 1/3 of it. But yeah, no, I love bots.
And I love TimeSplitters bots because they're such dinguses. Like every character in this game, the way that they look in third person is stupid because they're all just holding whatever gun they're holding with one hand in front of them with the other arm splayed out behind them.
Yeah.
So it's like a cave woman holding a minigun in one arm running down the way going And like they have like unique moves as well. Like they can do a sick dodge. And I remember my brother and I spent our entire childhoods, an entire life wasted trying to figure out how we can do that dodge move, and you just can't. It's just an AI exclusive feature.
I mean, be glad you don't have the stun feature, which is when you shoot someone long enough, they kind of like jolt a bit. Like, thank God that doesn't happen to players. That's one of the worst things you can be put through.
But like in Virus, the thing that's really endearing about them is that whenever they are infected with the virus, they scream.
Yeah.
So you'll just be running around the map trying to avoid the green virus people, and then you'll just hear in the background,
Yeah, it's all like stock sound effect screams, which makes it so much better.
Sometimes plays like 4 times in a row because people are getting infected really quickly, and each one plays their full clip in sequence. And it's like it's so silly.
Oh my god! I mean, I more recently, as part of the little tests I was doing, I decided to play Virus, but on the ice station map.
Ice station, yeah.
Which the trick to that map is that it's so big and open that really, when you're playing Virus, you just want to stay on the outskirts. You don't want to be anywhere near the middle.
Yeah.
Problem there is that the bots aren't going to be doing that. They'll run into each other in the middle. So it's one of the easiest ways to play that game is just to be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Whereas the way you have to unlock the virus mode is you have to do it on Chicago, which is this very tight, small level, and it's kind of tricky to try and stay alive for like 2 minutes on that level.
Yeah, because you'll just turn a corner in a building and there'll be a virus person there, and that's it. You're gone.
Yeah, and it can feel like you're all the way back to the beginning again.
It's more a matter of luck, but once again, that's just kind of part of the chaotic confluence of energy that is TimeSplitters 2. Like it's not necessarily a skill thing some of the time.
Yeah. Is that just about everything on multiplayer? I mean, like, without going into individual weapons, which I don't really want to do.
I mean, there's more modes we could talk about, I suppose. We could talk about Hangar.
Hangar, yeah.
That's a map. It's okay. It's good for Virus.
Yeah. Is it because it's like open? Because it's like the walkway?
It's a good map for Virus because it has 2 sections, the hangar itself and then like a series of like back corridors. And the thing about it is that you have to hold out for as long as you can in the back in the hangar level, and then when you get chased into the like the corridors. And so it's like you have to like seed the ground and then put yourself in a much more dangerous location. It's got a great pacing in that way.
That's very cool.
It is really cool. Yeah, I like that hangar a lot.
I do enjoy that in a lot of maps when you have that kind of a contrast between them. It feels like an exploration. It feels like there's like a whole thing. There's a few Halo levels like that. I think 2-4.
Yeah. So kind of what the multiplayer and the way it feels to me, it's like a massive modifier machine where you can basically set as many rule variations as you might wish in any multiplayer game. In fact, before you can even start multiplayer, you're taken to a menu where you set the kind of bots that you want, the kind of weapons, the music, the rules, enemy health values, things like that. Like it kind of feels like they just want you to be able to change every permutation of this game's mechanics and feels to suit your specific multiplayer needs to keep the game fresh. Like it's a really impressive suite of options ranging from the level of maps available, the different modes that you can play, the weapon sets, the bots, down to, you can change the gravity in some levels. You can make the game have bigger health pools or smaller health pools. You can really fine tune it to suit your purposes in a way that's really impressive.
Yeah, it's something that's really admirable about a lot of like multiplayer games from this era. It's a torch that Halo carried for a long time, and there's not that many that really do it nowadays.
Yeah.
Especially given that there's this urge to have like standardized matchmaking
like comparative
modes.
Yeah, it has to be a very specific way.
Yeah. There's always the discussion about difficulty in games and about whether or not it's better to give people a huge suite of options to customize the difficulty, or if it's better to tune the game entirely around one way of playing.
And when it comes, I'll be honest, because like sometimes when you launch a game of TimeSplitters and it gives you all these options, I just think to myself, I don't know. I just want to play standard TimeSplitters.
Oh, I jumped in on my on the save file that was on my Xbox, and just like I didn't know when the last time those options were changed. Pretty sure it was all set to automatics only, 10 minutes, no point limit, and I was there for ages, being like, when do I score? Like this is 100 points to win. Like,
well, this is gonna take forever.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you do want a curated, definitive experience of a game. When you have too many options, it can feel a bit formless, I suppose. Which this game does sometimes have that issue, because sometimes you can think to yourself, what is the actual default, unique TimeSplitters experience? And you have so many ways of changing how it feels.
Yeah. This kind of customization is something, because as you say, it can be overwhelming. There's times wherever I would try to make like a custom mode in Halo, and it would give you so many options of, oh, there's the custom power-up, what is this? And it would just show you all the player options. I'd be like, oh, I don't fucking know. Maximum gravity. What is it? What have I done to the game? And TimeSplitters, I don't think gets that bad, but there's a lot of times where it's still a thing of, what bot set do you want? How many of them do you want to be on? Like, what weapons do you want? It's like, I don't know. There's somehow you can have shotguns only, and you have more than like one weapon, and I'm like, Jesus, I didn't even know this many existed. But
it's kind of a good way to tie this game back to its visuals as well, because I was speaking about what kind of makes the definitive TimeSplitters experience, and I feel like chaos is what makes the definitive TimeSplitters experience. The game is just inherently chaotic, from its visuals to its music to its gameplay to its options. If you're thinking to yourself what makes TimeSplitters, it's just that you can do anything in that game. Like, it doesn't have a cohesive single identity. It's trying to do so many different things that's what ties it all together.
Yeah.
Like, they've really gone all the way on that direction, even down to the way the game looks and the way the game sounds,
I'm almost a little jealous that you've put that better than I could, because this embodies chaos in the best possible way.
Yeah.
I love that. Nowadays, a you can do anything game is probably more defined by something like Minecraft or Gary's Mod, something that's like a buildy sandbox. But
come on, I'm not creative.
Yeah,
I just build cubes in Minecraft. I have no idea what I'm doing.
I mean, on the subject of not being creative, I would love to talk about the map maker, but I have no experience in it.
See, I used the map maker when I was a wee girl. I didn't make anything good with it, but you could make actually pretty good horror levels. Because what the maps felt like, and especially if you had limited lighting, they would feel like you were sealed into a void, into this dark, oddly coloured other space that made no actual sense. And maybe I was a child when this was happening, so I was too easily impressioned upon. But it just kind of felt like you were in this alien, hostile world that you made, that it kind of had this really great vibe to it. Obviously, we've not done the map maker in the time since I played it as a girl, but I remember at the time it actually had this really great vibe to it, and you could make kind of weird little creepy stories based. Like, you could do a really good TimeSplitters 2 map maker creepypasta, I feel.
Yeah.
Like, because it has this weird, like, hostile, synthetic, fake energy to it.
Something that just breaks off the endless, deluge of Gary's Mod ARGs and Sonic.exe clones.
Like Sonic killed Tails with a bigger gun.
No, that's a good point. Like, there's potential here.
Yeah.
And I mean, even by its basic standpoints, like, half the levels of this game are like moody, atmospheric.
Well, I think the thing that really distinguished it is that all the levels felt like they had this real strong sense of authorial intent. Like, they were made by someone who handcrafted the level and put all these elements in place.
Yeah.
When you're doing the map maker, you were like combining like pre-made tiles together, and it stripped TimeSplitters 2 of that visual cohesion in a way that was deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like you were looking at the building blocks of the universe, but before anyone with any real soul had touched them.
Oh my god, yeah, that's a good point. I think older map makers in general kind of have that feeling, because like, some games have map makers which you just really wouldn't expect. Like F-Zero has map makers, like for F-Zero X. Like, you could only get it on the disk drive. It was quite elaborate. There was quite a lot you could do with it, including making maps that kill all of the AI. Like, they don't know, they do not know how to race on them, like that kind of thing.
Fun.
But
it's like Excitebike 64 had an endless, like, an open world mode where you're just driving through a big desert.
I need to find that because I have Excitebike 64.
Yeah, on your 7 N64s.
That's weird. I'm a PlayStation kid, but I have like 2 N64s and a bunch of games for them.
Yeah, you got a NES as well.
I do have a NES, although I don't know if it works anymore.
Nah, yeah.
I've been trying to get that thing running for a while. But so,
It's a long-term project of yours.
Yeah,
so you can play Bayou Billy.
Yeah. Our Wario's Woods podcast is a little bit delayed as a result of that. I do apologize.
Yeah, sadly, we live in Europe. So our access to the NES library is limited to about 10% of the games, and they all suck. They all run like 20% slower.
Oh, that's very much true.
I kind of want to talk a bit more about the maps and the characters of the multiplayer mode before we go on to that.
Yeah, go right ahead.
There's a really good selection of different maps from the different time periods of the game. So, for instance, there's a nightclub level from the 1920s, which has that music we were talking about earlier, that kind of really upbeat jazz age music.
Yes, yes.
There's like an ice station and like a Mexican church from like the 1800s.
Yeah, like Alamo era.
Yeah, exactly, with elaborate arches and stuff like that. I always liked the weird cathedral
Yes,
That's like
Notre
a weird
Dame.
hospital.
Oh no, hospital. Yes, I know the one.
Like, it's like a weird gothic hospital though. It's got this really cool vibe to it because there's not much music in that level.
No,
it's playing Virus on that is kind of haunting actually.
Yeah, it gives you entire because playing Virus on Nightclub, it feels like a frantic rush, a dash, or run. It feels like because
that music, like when it loads up and it's like then. And everyone's the screams. Yeah. Like it seems like a meta thing. Yeah. It seems like a modern movie would do that kind of stuff.
And you're watching like the mustachioed secret agent man running by and all this stuff. And then
Big Nose Larry.
Yeah, and then you go over to the hospital where it feels like a horror game. It feels like a thing of like, oh god, this is tense. I don't want anything near me. Jeez.
Even to the point that every level has its recommended bot set, which would be the characters that are actually relevant to that level. And the one for hospital is zombies. So it actually replaces the screams with like horrible unearthly groans and just like so it kind of adds to that atmosphere, you know.
Yeah.
Or you could have sci-fi people on there and that's funny as well.
You know what you were talking about in terms of the potential to make good creepypasta stuff out of the TimeSplitters map maker is when you think about it, like the thing that's always scary in games, the thing that I find scarier than any like deliberate by design horror is whenever just games are just this medley of things that are just happening to you. It's whenever it's like it's something just coming around the corner. It's like a sudden sound. It's like these things.
Or like the music cuts out or something happens that's unexpected.
Yeah, like it's not that it's trying to jump scare you. Like some of the scariest moments in gaming can happen in like Minecraft.
Yeah.
When you're like, holy fucking shit, that's a skeleton. Like that kind of thing. And that's what I get from playing Virus on like those moodier maps.
Yeah.
And that's what gives it that prospect, that potential. Like, oh my god, this has been a real eye-opener of a podcast for me personally, of just like
allowing you to process your feelings about this game.
Yeah, and just about the big reflection I would make, and this is really something I should say for a conclusion, but I want to say it now while it's on my mind. This game is from an era that we're not in anymore. The standards of what we're supposed to expect from games is so different now that it's like, come on, there's good stuff here. In terms of their design, like I'm not going to pretend that the fundamentals of the design are like crazy good.
Yeah.
But I can remember a lot of them really vividly. There's like this canyon map that's like a head-to-head sort of thing. It reminds me of something out of like a Halo 2 level.
Yeah.
There's we've talked already about Mexican Mission and the ice station. And all
Aztec,
this stuff,
which is like an old Aztec ruin.
Love Aztec.
Yeah, with like traps and stuff around.
Yeah, that one's like a fun asymmetrical sort of like map as well.
And they're all really vertical as well. There's lots of different levels that you can go onto, like stairs and like little hiding areas and stuff.
Yeah, I remember that being one of the big talking points when there was ever any kind of like game design sort of notes to take that were from the late 2000s, is they always make a point of going, hey, design verticality because it's really important to levels. It's something that has to be hammered into newbies to this day because people just don't realize it. We work in 2D, right? We draw in 2D, everything like that. And it's difficult to visualize things in a third dimension, but you got to do it for games.
That's why it's so hard to make maps.
Yeah, it's really hard to make maps.
Games, like how you layer those different elements on.
Honestly, whenever I would try to develop a game, or even when I use a map maker, I spend a lot of time trying to just figure out the feel and the kinks and like all of the levels of it, because that's something that gives it that edge. It gives it that flavor, you know.
And all the TimeSplitters 2 levels definitely have that soul and that personality that makes them feel unique and easily identifiable by their traits. Like you remember all the levels by their own vibes and styles and feelings.
Yeah, it's a cliched phrase these days, and I think some would even say it's kind of loaded. But would you say this game has soul?
This game is chock full of soul. This game is like Pixar's soul. Like it's got so much energy, and you can tell that the people who are making it just really had so many ideas that they could fit into it, and it's bursting at the seams with that kind of feeling and power and energy. Like it really is a game that it's very distinct, and you can remember it so well because like it's so. I played this game when I was a girl, and I have a fairly bad memory, but when we were playing through it, I was like, I remember all these levels, I remember all these maps. Like it's so stuck in my brain how these sounds and how this feels and how it looks, you know. Like it's very, 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 very memorable. Yeah, I concur with that one. This game has always had a distinct place in the sort of lineup of games I played that was very different from everything else. Yeah, I mean, having sort of touched upon the levels, is there anything else you'd like to talk about in terms of the multiplayer? Yeah, so I'd like to talk about the Arcade League and the challenge mode. So The game is one of those games in which you do have a wide swath of options, but they are not all available to you from the onset. In fact, I believe from the start you have access to maybe 5 or 6 maps.
Yeah,
and
you don't get many.
2 game modes. So the way that you unlock them is by engaging in the Arcade League, which is basically a series of challenge modes based on different modifiers. So, for instance, some of them are fairly plain Jane, like there's get 20 kills within a certain time period, like survive in Virus for 2 minutes, that's how you unlock Virus.
Yeah.
But then some of them are quite unique, where it's like, okay, you're in one of the single-player maps, and you have bricks, and you have to break as many windows in the map as quickly as you can.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, like, you're trapped in a circle that's being surrounded by ever-spawning zombies, and you have to kill them all, like, surviving the longest as you can, basically.
Yeah.
And, like, you get, like, bronze, silver, and gold medals, and there's, like, a really, really huge swath of them at, like, loads of difficulty levels, and, like, each one gets you, like, a character, or a rule set, or a weapon. Like, there's... Even beyond the single-player campaign, there's a great deal of single-player content to be engaging with. And a lot of it is just really unique and fun because it's just challenge stuff. It's just like, we have all these elements, all these levels, all these characters, all these modes. Go wild with them. Prove that you're as good as all of them as you can be, basically.
Oh, I want to contrast the idea of something as basic as the idea of here's a brick, break every window in the map.
Yeah.
I want to contrast that in terms of this being a multiplayer focused game from the 2000s to like a modern day RPG, which is that back then, having these kind of missions in a game felt like it was effectively the designers of the game who were so familiar with the levels they were making, just going, all right, we've noticed this, we think it would be funny to do this, we're going to make this a challenge, and it ends up being really compelling.
Yeah.
It's like something that breaks up the usual flow of gameplay. It's something I want more from games, is to have that.
I mean, you can micro-focus on just the brick-throwing game and how the game is so varied, because there are 2 brick-throwing levels, one which is set in the Siberia map, and the second which is set in Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So the first one is you're just throwing windows through doors and like through windows and stuff like that. And then the second one, you have a grenade launcher and you're trying to break all of the windows in Notre Dame. So you're trying to shoot out all the stained glass. And they're both the same objective, but they feel so different from one another.
Yeah, because it's like trying to measure the arc and everything, exactly. And it's on this massive cathedral. Yeah, that ends up becoming its own mini game. It becomes a little side activity.
Yeah, exactly.
It might be a little bit frustrating, especially if it's something that
it's
doesn't gel with
infuriating.
everyone. Yeah.
I'm so bad at that brick throwing one.
But I kind of like it as being a standout thing. Whereas a modern day game, if you have something like that in it, it's usually like, we've made an open world, we need to make it feel filled. What do we do? If you put that into like a Witcher ripoff, people would be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like they'd be like, I'm wasting time. Like when everyone kind of like posits those criticisms at like World of Warcraft, like the stereotype of an MMO where they go, oh, the quest is I have to go and collect 20 sheepskins from the Bugalesh mines.
Don't you come with the sheepskin quest, Connie? I know that means a lot to me.
But people see that now in a modern game and they're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Because it feels more like a chore in those cases. It doesn't feel like there's something else in those games that people want to be doing more of, and the game will lock it behind like progression or leveling or something like that. And the thing is that in something like TimeSplitters, those mini games still lock something behind it.
Yeah.
But it's not this sensation of this is something you absolutely must need. Those kind of RPG systems, like you need to get that XP, you need to finish those missions just so you can
got to
fight
be on that grind set.
Yeah, just so you can fight the next boss. Yeah. Whereas in TimeSplitters, it's like, well, you won't get Chinatown.
Yeah. If you want to come back and try again, feel free to. But,
yeah. But in the meantime, here's already a ton of things to do.
Yeah.
You're golden. You're good. We already have every weapon and available and like a bunch of characters.
Yeah.
That's something that's kind of interested me about it. I remember us going through a good chunk of those while we were playing back last year.
Well, I think it's because we wanted to do a multiplayer session, but we wanted to have some of the options unlocked, so we spent a good bit of time going through some of the challenges.
Yeah.
And it was honestly, even as a co-op experience, because you have to do those single player, basically, that's the only way that they work. But it was still fun to watch, because you were just like cheering each other on and hoping that you would nail the brick throwing minigame that time, or you would unlock a new option, and it was like a really communal experience.
Oh, I mean, that's something that I don't think we've played enough games where we elaborate on this, is that quite a few of the games we've talked about have been games where one of us has primarily been doing it and the other one's kind of going like, yeah, you do it.
Yeah, like Hunting Ground was entirely me.
Whereas this, like, games like this, and there are quite a few others on the list, we take turns. It would be a thing of, like, you're watching the other person and you're being like, oh my god, are they actually going to do it? Are we going to get to the next stage?
Or, like, they would die and you'd be like, all right, I'll give it a try. Like, hand me the controller.
Yeah, it's like proper social gaming.
Yeah.
Like, this is a social game. It's a multiplayer game.
Yeah.
It's what TimeSplitters 1 wanted to be by just having those multiplayer elements.
This game is about family.
And that's what's so powerful about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When are we gonna?
Someone like Jack Nicholson.
I don't listen. We need more candidates for the worst impression category at the List Goes On Awards. We can have that one.
Yeah, we can have that one. I do my my Barack Obama impression or something.
When we get to Ridge Racer, I don't know.
Sure, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
That's why I feel like when I'm talking about the multiplayer and the single player feeling in lockstep with one another, the Arcade League kind of feels like the middle point between those two different modes, because it's all being done on the multiplayer maps with bots, but it has that kind of single player level based focus where it's a solo activity and you're doing it by yourself, but you're doing it with the multiplayer mechanics and it unlocks things in the multiplayer. So it kind of exemplifies and demonstrates the way those two elements are locked with each other, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's quite a nice sort of like element of the game.
And it works so well because those two elements are so tightly linked with one another that you can have a mode that has the elements of both and make it work so well, you know?
Social gaming, it's wonderful.
It's fantastic.
I suppose off the topic of social, even though this is a co-op game, this has a little bit of
a little bit of something for everyone.
Yeah. We've got an entire side of the game we've yet to talk about.
Oh, we have to talk about the deeply complex and multi-layered, thematic and evocative, beautiful story campaign.
Yeah.
The tale of TimeSplitters 2 will go down in history. It will be remembered for all time by all peoples.
Yeah, this has already been talked about. They're going to be doing an adaptation of this into novels and into
HBO
like a
series.
Yeah.
Pedro Pascal's going to be the jester.
I would love to see him in a jester outfit.
That'd be fantastic, yeah.
A fan casting, Peter Dinklage as the time child. The machine child.
Please, Connor. Right. The machine child.
I keep doing this.
Respect him.
It's because it's a game about time.
Also, we hate the machine child.
Yeah, because we spent way too long on his level.
He's our greatest rival.
Yeah, we tried to unlock him for so long as a playable character.
Let's give the context on how the single player works, basically. So you have access to 10 levels, each one set in a different time period.
Yeah.
You have a series of like small objectives to complete in each level, some mandatory, some optional. What's cool about it though, and I think it's the same in GoldenEye and Perfect Dark as well, is that the difficulty that you select actually affects the objectives that you have. So for instance, in the first level, the Siberia level, the objective that you have is to infiltrate the facility, disable all of its cameras, and then retrieve the time crystal.
Yeah.
But then when you're playing in normal, you have an extra part of the level to go to where you have to go to the top of the dam and fight a helicopter. So like the difficulty doesn't just affect health and damage, it affects the levels that you do. You do more stuff based on those difficulty modifiers.
Yeah. I really like that as a way of going about it. It's something I admired about GoldenEye when I played it too, was just this idea of, hey, the difficulty's not just that things hit harder and you're weaker, it's also that you've got more to do.
Yeah, exactly. The level's more complex.
Yeah. I don't know what it says about me, but that my other point of comparison for this is Sonic Heroes. Like, if you play as Amy Rose, you have the shortest levels. If you play as Shadow, you play as the Shadow, Rouge, and Omega, you have the longest levels.
It reminds me of how in Jamma Lamy,
Aha.
You can't get to the final level unless you're playing on normal.
Yeah, we tried to do it on easy, which is just basically you press any button at the beat. And
we were still bad at that.
I think part of it's us, but it's also part of just the trying to emulate that game and trying to play those
modern
notes.
plasmas, like a monitor, it does not work very well.
It really doesn't. Yeah. But I really enjoy that, and I think that Siberia is a really good opening level for this sort of thing. It's a very distinct one. It's not a Mario World 1 grass level. It's this frosty place that has intrigue and stuff. I mean, it's also that thing of you get that opening cutscene where it's the two main characters who are fighting the TimeSplitters. Where they go through time and you actually see them like looking at the body they're in now, just being like, oh man.
Because Cortex inhabits a woman's body in the first time split that he does, which is an interesting little like, oh, this is a cool. I don't want to say it's like a cool like progressive thing, but it's like, oh, it's like you've changed so much because of this jump. It's like a cool like this is going to be a wacky ride basically. And then it's so fun. What I really like about the first opening area in Siberia is that you're outside the dam in a little like sentry post where there's like 2 or 4 buildings and there's a bunch of guards and security cameras.
Yeah.
And you start off with like a sniper rifle and like a little radar that you can use to detect the thing. So if you so choose, you can go through the map sniping people with a little silenced pistol and doing it entirely stealth.
Yeah.
Like it really exemplifies right away how the levels are going to have options and how they're going to be complex little puzzles that you can solve, or you can just go through and shoot everyone.
Can I tell a little story about Siberia?
Yeah. From when your father was in the gulag.
Oh, yeah. It's a tough time.
I know it's tough for you to open up about that.
I know.
We're all friends here. You can be honest with us.
My brother had this game on his Xbox.
I think we're looking at that copy right now, aren't we?
I want to say it is, but we'll get more into that in a bit.
Definitely. There's stories with that copy we'll get into.
There is. One of the games that he had was The Thing.
The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing.
The Thing, the Xbox game. And
it was John Carpenter's The Thing, the movie, the game.
Yeah, and I think he said to me, he was like, you can't watch me play that. Because
that's too fucked up for you.
If you've seen the movie, you don't let your 7-year-old look at that. You know what you do?
Maybe your square brother doesn't. My brother was cool.
Okay, but
my brother showed me the scene from Jason X where he smashes a woman's head open and I cried.
Yeah, fair. I think he didn't want that to happen with me. But there was a point where I think I snuck in to watch him play something.
Okay.
And I thought I was watching him play The Thing. But he was actually playing TimeSplitters. He was playing the Siberian level in TimeSplitters.
We haven't talked about it, but there's a dumb opening cutscene to the Siberia level where it's these two yobbo guards who are trying to sneak their way into the bottom of the base, and they get fucking owned by a zombie and a bunch of smucks.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's a weird Costello and Abbott bit where it's these two dunderheads who drop their flashlight and then get killed by a zombie.
I think this speaks a lot to the difference between yourself and I, honestly, myself and a lot of my friends, is I looked upon that and thought that was the horror. That was the incomprehensible, what I wasn't allowed to see. And it fucked me up when I eventually got to see what actual 18+ games were like.
A sheltered life.
I did. No, unironically, I did live a sheltered life. I was playing Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, the first game I played was Resident Evil 1.
I don't know why I was allowed Dawn of War, or why Dawn of War didn't traumatize me. Something about it worked.
Yeah.
But Siberia is a really great opening level.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you remember the one that comes afterwards, right?
I do remember. I remember the levels in the exact order in which they appear.
Ooh.
So the next level is Chicago.
Oh, they jumped right into it.
Yeah. It's right from Siberia to Chicago, which is 1920s Prohibition Chicago. So it's a lot of gangs and stuff like that.
That's the era to do it, right?
Exactly.
If you're going to have this time-traveling romp and you're going to set something out in the Windy City, you're going to do, You're going to do that Al Capone, Bugsy Malone era.
Yeah, exactly. This is another level where it kind of flexes in a lot of its flexibility and what it can do, because some of the objectives are things like you have to go find these barrels of bootlegged beer and shoot the barrels. And the thing that's cool about it is that you have to shoot it at the bottom, otherwise it will only empty to the point where you've shot it. So it only counts as fully depleted if you shoot it right at the bottom and all the alcohol pours out of that hole.
Yeah, there's the liquid dynamics, which not that many games have ever done because it's such a small detail. They made that into an actual gameplay element. That's super cool.
Yeah.
There was a while ago, it was a clip from a Splinter Cell game where you can shoot a fish tank and it kills the fish because all the water comes out of it. And that was a sign of tech and how that kind of attention to detail isn't being done in games anymore.
Or how in Metal Gear Solid 2, you can watch the ice cubes melt in real time.
Yeah. Which I will say, it very much is superfluous. It's a lot of machine calculating. It's intensive on hardware a lot of the time. But I love that it was a thing. And when games do little things like that, even today, I appreciate it regardless.
It's special,
I just love the style of the Chicago level. I love the character designs in it too.
Yeah, they have this real hard-nosed detective gumshoe vibe to it as well, because you're trying to basically sneak into the club of a notorious gangster called Jimmy the Fist or whatever his stupid name is, or Big Jimmy.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is that you're getting telephone calls from mysterious informants who don't give you their name. You're following people into shady clubs before being ambushed by a horde of gangsters. It really leans into that aesthetic in a way that's quite impressive.
Yeah.
It's not just window dressing, it kind of really inhabits that time period and uses a lot of those stereotypes to make a really fun story.
You know what I've just had a thought about with this?
Yeah.
Is that TimeSplitters is just Quantum Leap if it was written by a kid.
Yeah.
It's TimeSplitters, but it's you go anywhere in time and you do these cool actiony things. It's not just, I gotta save someone's marriage.
Although the Chicago level is the first one where the kind of disparity between the main story and the set pieces comes into play, where it's you're going into Big Jimmy's lair or whatever. You have to call a car that's going to deliver something to his club, so they'll open the doors for you, and then you've got follow behind the car and get into the club that way. And then you get into the club, and then suddenly aliens start spawning in, and you just start shooting them, and then you get a time crystal, and it's okay, great.
I mean, most of the time, as soon as the TimeSplitters actually arrive, that's when you got to go.
Yeah, that's when you got to book out.
Which that's a fun thing. Is everything? Is it starts out with the normality of that setting, and then the TimeSplitters suddenly come. What I kind of wanted to see more of was just people who are in that time period's reaction to what the fuck is happening when that starts going on, because you don't get it. But
I believe the implication is that the gangster is somehow benefiting from the TimeSplitters presence. He's using their abilities to push his bootleg plugging operation forward or something.
The idea that there's just a big time conspiracy where all these different characters through time all benefit from it. It's the kind of thing where, like, depending on the context, that's either like a really cliche, dumb trope and people would hate it, or it's something that makes these things fun and exciting, you know, which I think in this kind of game it does.
There's also a little detail about the Chicago level I wanted to get to, which is that after you've talked to the informant on the phone, you can keep ringing the phone.
Can you?
Yeah, and you just get this old lady who's like, I think you have the wrong number, dearie, and you can just make that loop over and over again.
That's fun.
It is really fun. Although it does have an escort mission, which blows.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I know the one.
With Jimmy the Squealer.
Oh my god. I mean, the names of the characters as well. I love the character designs from the Chicago levels, like Mikey Two Guns and all this shit.
Yeah, they're all very silly. And like, I think the gangsters goons are all like, what are we going to do about this guy, boss?
Yeah, they have great voices.
Yeah,
It's really just indulging in the tropes of everything.
Yeah, exactly,
it's having fun with it. What comes after Chicago?
What is after Chicago is the introduction of the most beloved and beautiful character in the entire TimeSplitters canon, because it is Notre Dame in 1830.
Yes.
Yeah.
A hell of a third mission.
Definitely. Well, it's weird because they've been doing a lot of past stuff for the first few, because it's like 1970 Siberia, and then 1920 Chicago, and then 1830s Paris and stuff like that. Like, we're very much going back at this stage before going any further forward, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's a really creepy one. It's more of a horror thing because you're trying to rescue these other women that have been kidnapped.
Yeah, these very buxom and bodacious ladies have been kidnapped by the mysterious and evil serial killer whose name I've completely forgotten. But basically, you're like exploring Notre Dame, fighting zombies, I guess, and helping the Hunchback of Notre Dame rescue Esmeralda from zombies.
I think this might be one of the most creative sort of like levels in the game. I just
and
in
it's
terms
got
of
Viola in it.
It does.
Who's a sexy jester. She's great. I love Viola. She's so cool.
I can't say I blame you. I mean, there's just lots of character designs I like in this game.
Do you remember the name of the detective from the Chicago level? What his name is?
I remember his design, but I just don't remember his name.
Because like there's a main character and then there's a co-op character, which you obviously didn't see if you're not playing a co-op. So like in the Siberia level, the main woman is like the main character is this woman who's got like this like bearskin hat on and she's wearing like spy clothes, and then I can't even remember who the second guy is. No, he's the old guy with the big mustache.
Oh yes,
yeah, he's great. And then in Chicago, the main character is like this like hard-boiled detective type, and then his side character is like this like housewife. Yeah, he's got like the big hair and like the dress on and stuff, and that's really cool.
Who's Viola's side character? Does she not have one?
I think it might be another old guy.
Okay.
He's like an oldie-timey, like, doctor-looking guy with, like, a big hat.
Oh, yes, yes. That's why I kept thinking this was a hospital when it wasn't.
No, you're in Notre Dame itself.
Yeah.
Which has a few annoying elements because you have to rescue the damsels in distress, and they suck. Like, they're such idiots. And they'll just run right into zombies, and then they'll get killed. And, like, the game has a fun thing where if you fail an objective, it doesn't game over. It just says mission failed, restart idiot, and you have to do it yourself.
Yeah. Which that's a quirk of the time, right? Which I wouldn't mind a TimeSplitters remake.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
There are topics on that front.
Certainly.
To discuss. But I think the ending of the Notre Dame level is you have to fight this. I think he might just be Jack the Ripper, even though it's not the right city.
Well, that was what I was thinking, was did they initially come up with this idea of, what if you play through the times of Jack the Ripper? And then someone went, set it something more interesting. Set it in Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Fuck London.
Yeah.
We've been to London. It's okay.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Everything important is in one place.
It's really big. Me and our artist went to London recently for a concert, and we were the most embarrassing yokel, like, small town hicks going around and being like, it's really big here. Whoa. Oh my god. Oh, they haven't got that back home in Norfolk. They don't.
I had to go to London earlier this year to hand in a something
for administration work.
Something like that. And it was just wandering around London by yourself when you're not familiar with the city and just being like, where the fuck am I? There's Shake Shacks in the UK. I've never heard of this. All right.
I saw a Wendy's.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I was like, what's this doing here?
Oh my god.
Have I been time split?
You've more like you've been space split. You've been
teleported elsewhere.
Several sides of the Atlantic have all come together at once. But I'm a little bit hazy on a lot of the levels on this. Like, I remember the highlights of them, but like never the order.
Okay.
Because
do you know what's next?
Because I assume next was Atom Smasher.
No, Atom Smasher is your way off. Next is Planet X.
Is that when you're playing as the 50 space
guy? When you're playing as the 50 space guy,
yeah.
you're like following a bunch of like squid aliens in a UFO, and you're like driving this dumb like 1950s ship.
I love how that opens.
Yeah. And like the main character is like this like Zap Brannigan looking guy with like a really big chin and like the perfect brown hair, and his sidekick is this like blonde lady who's very curvaceous and has like a gun and she holds it like like that.
Yeah.
Which is so silly.
I kind of love it though for having this just the boldness because I feel like it's probably the odd one out a lot of the time in terms of appeal.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I'm just glad they got away with it. Like there was something zany. It wasn't my favorite level by a long shot.
Planet X might be my least favorite level.
Yeah, I remember it just kind of dragging on.
It's got a lot of turret sections where you're just fighting off waves of they're called like quigclogs. They're called like blongolos or something. They've got this really silly name. There are a bunch of squids.
Yeah.
And I think there's like a squid civil war going on because you're fighting two different factions of squids and you have like a squid ally and it's just like alright.
Yeah, isn't that you're kind of there to mess around with it for a bit?
Yeah, basically. And it ends with you breaking into this UFO and having to go to like this like nuclear like or like this like space nuke weapon factory and trying to sabotage that so they can't win the war against humanity basically. And it's just like the level's very confusing as well because it's this big desert. Like this big like craggy rocky world and it's just really hard to navigate and we just kept like walking around in circles getting lost and going up lifts and stuff. Like Planet X is not a great level.
No, I can't say I blame you for that one. I think that might be why I wasn't sure about when the others happened because a lot of my memory is of Planet X.
Yeah.
And then the cyberpunk street level.
Yeah, because you're missing a level again.
I'm assuming so. It wasn't Wild West.
Wild West is next.
Wild West was next.
Wild West is the next one.
Yeah, the fun thing is that the Wild West aesthetic in this game is one I'm quite fond of, but at the same time, I remember that level was just us faffing around trying to break the wall down for ages.
Yeah, so I think the Wild West, what they're choosing to have is like we're in the occupied or the Mexican secession. Like we're in that part of the country with a lot of that kind of architecture and stuff like that. And you're playing as... He's like a bounty hunter. I forget his name. He sucks. But he's trying to get this like lady friend of his out of jail. And you have to do this really... It's like a weird physics puzzle where you're trying to move this oil near to the wall. Yeah,
it might not have been that tricky for other people, but we just kept running into problems with trying to make it work because it didn't seem to work right.
Yeah, to the point where we watched the video of someone else doing it, replicated their actions entirely, and it still didn't work for us.
Yeah.
And we're just like, what's going on?
Yeah, it was very finicky.
Yeah.
But do you remember this detail? Because it was set during that time, but they have a character, like the villain of that level is someone from the Confederacy.
Yeah,
but the level is set in like 1848.
Yeah.
It's from before that Civil War even happened.
Inconsistent, yeah. And that guy is like the leader of some like rebellious gang or something like that. But I remember that level being a bit of a pain because you're going through a very classic Wild West town.
Yeah.
And people are just shooting you from everywhere. Like, because they're all hidden up in these buildings and it's like you're trying to like take out all these bounties and stuff like that. But it's really hard to see them. Like, it's kind of a pain.
Yeah, we were getting sniped.
And then you go to like this like big valley where you've got to kill the gang leader and like get this dynamite to go down a mine cart and stuff like that. And it's just like a really big... kind of empty level. It's not like the best one in the world.
No, that's the one I probably would chalk up to being like my second least favorite.
Yeah, definitely.
I think
I didn't
in
like
the game.
not Wild West much either.
Yeah. Is our next one? I want to say that's a cyberpunk one.
Yeah, it's Neo Tokyo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Which I'm of a very mixed opinion about Neo Tokyo because I really like the vibe of Neo Tokyo. It's like a cyberpunk, futuristic, Asian-inspired level where it's a bunch of high-tech people who are very stylishly dressed going through this like cyber world.
I think the main character is called the Cyber Fairy.
Yeah,
in that one.
Yeah. It's very much like Ghost in the Shell or like Akira, stuff like that.
Yes.
The reason why it's so controversial, at least between the two of us, is that it is mostly a stealth section. Like it's you're trying to infiltrate a rival gang, playing as this kind of like he's like this like really pale with like white hair, thin guy, and then like your character, the female character, is like she's like wearing all these fishnets and stuff like that. And you're trying to break into this gang's base to steal a lot of their data, basically.
Yeah.
So you're in like a urban shopping center, and you're trying to follow her to her base without being caught. And it's a really great premise and it's really cool, but it's so frustrating.
Yes, that's the thing, is I really like this level in terms of its premise on paper.
Yeah.
I like the aesthetic of it. That's something that really carries it, but I also very much enjoy this idea of, you sneak around for a bit, you do a little bit of this quiet stuff before going loud, going into the underground base, and then doing all the stuff in there. Loved that as an idea, but that stealth section, it's so long. It's so easy to screw it up. We ended up cheesing it in a really weird way.
Yeah, we found like a box that you could hide behind. So if you just like run past her, because it's quite an open level, which is really exciting because there's lots of different routes you could take. But if you just run past her and find this one box and stand behind it, she doesn't see you when she passes by you. So you could just stand there and wait for her to go, and then you're kind of golden by that point.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like it's like in the back alley, right near where she's going, like right near the actual point.
Like when you're playing it in co-op as well, it's like a huge pain in the butt to try and get both of you not to be caught, because there's like cameras around as well and like civilians and stuff.
I think that one of us had to climb onto the other one and stand on them. If I'm, I could be getting that wrong, but I think that's what we did. We did a little. There's a lot of things we could do for the art for this episode. I feel like one of them is you in the jester outfit, then me as the cat, but with like the Cortex, the Cortex goggles on his head, and we're just hiding behind a dumpster waiting for this fucking lady.
Because that's the thing, is that when you get to her secret base, it's kind of like hidden away in this sewer. And there's this really annoying section where there's a force field keeping intruders out, basically. And you have to be sneaking behind the lady far enough away that she can't see you, but not too far away that you can't make it through the force field before it closes.
Yeah.
And there's this really annoying bit where if you get past the force field, but she still sees you, even though you're in the base, you fail the mission, you've got to retry from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, very pernickety and, like, tempestuous and really, really specific in a way that's just really frustrating.
Yeah, I think I'd also be more fond of these levels with the multifaceted objectives and all of this stuff if it had more kind of checkpoints in it.
Yeah, definitely. Like
sorry. I've just got a call.
Connor's ruined the podcast.
One moment.
The podcast is done.
Sorry, I'm just checking on my times crystals. They're still there. They're still there.
He just threw his phone on the floor. Tried to like throw it on the bed and he totally missed.
Connor be like, why doesn't my phone work anymore?
What's going on? This is crazy.
At least it doesn't have a crack in it somehow. It's just everything inside of it doesn't work.
Anyway, Neo Tokyo is okay. Great premise, great aesthetic. Yeah. Really annoying mechanic.
Is this the second episode where I'm going to have a Patreon bit where I throw my phone?
Yeah, man, it's consistent.
Yeah,
that's one of our famous traits.
It's like poetry, it rhymes.
Yeah, they call us the phone throwers. Yeah.
We should rename the podcast.
We should not do that.
No.
It's a terrible name.
No. I feel like I'm going to bet on this horse too much.
Go ahead.
Afterwards is Atom Smasher.
Yes! And then we can finally have our Atom Smasher bitch moment where we just complain about Atom Smasher, because Atom Smasher is a James Bond style like espionage thriller.
Yeah, it's like 1970s.
Yeah, and you're in an evil scientist base and you're playing as Harry Tipper, who's like an Austin Powers like stand-in.
Yes,
like,
that was his name.
He's got like a big mustache and he's like really horny, basically. Like
he's one of the characters I remember in terms of aesthetic, because I remember seeing him a lot in multiplayer. And I remember being overwhelmed with joy when we got to that level, and I was like, I can finally be Harry Tipper.
Like the intro cutscene is literally him stuck to a table with a laser about to pierce his dick, and he comes off right before it hits his groin, and it's just like, oh, that's so classic. Like,
it really is. This game has a lot of fun with its cutscenes and everything.
Stuff. Yeah, it's really fun.
But in terms of the level itself, it dragged on. There was so much,
and it's like you have a time limit, and like it's like one of the most like action orientated levels in the game, which does not do it well. I mean, this is the mission that we played on normal that we were able to finish that took us the longest, because we just like could not get through the gauntlet of enemies without just being mowed down in our fucking tracks. Like, because most of it is just going down these long corridors and there's enemies all the way down them and they will just snipe at you from a million miles away.
Yeah.
And it was kind of satisfying because we would develop plans to deal with each individual component, but executing it wasn't fun because it was just tedious. It felt like it took forever, and it was just like, you had to do it within a certain time because otherwise the base would blow up, and it was just like, oh my god, would this level please end? It just kept going.
Yeah, it really did. I think this is one of those levels that kind of dominated a lot of my memory of playing this game. It was like this level, it was the 50 space one, and it was a robot factory.
Yeah.
And I think it might be because they were just very long and tedious.
Yeah, I mean, Atom Smasher is the level that made me torment and rage against the controls as much as I had been playing this game, because it required such precise reflexes and precision aiming, and it was just so hard to achieve with the really murky kind of old style shooter controls that the game had.
It's so we have a very bipolar kind of feeling on this game, because I feel like when we played it single player, there were lots of these frustrating moments. We were like, come on, this is getting ridiculous and this is archaic. But when we actually think about what this game is and what it's supposed to be doing, maybe the multiplayer section of it is really what carries that spirit and the single player doesn't.
Yeah.
But
well, because the thing is that the multiplayer doesn't demand anything of you. It doesn't demand you to be precise. It doesn't demand you to complete certain objectives. It's just have a good time with random bots, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas a single player is like, all right, you have 5 minutes to get through this level. There is 100 enemies. Try and use precision aiming. Like, it demands much more of you. And you begin to realize that the game's mechanics aren't actually that good for that kind of thing. Like, when it pushes you to that limit, you're like, oh, actually, this is kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
Not that I dislike the campaign, but that is an element when you're playing on the higher difficulty stories as well of like, oh god, this game actually doesn't control super well. Like, it's kind of annoying to actually do precise, complex actions with it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Is there anything else to say about Atom Smasher other than those dumb scientists who suck?
I love those guys.
Save these atomic scientists and they just run around like Half-Life 1 scientists like, hello!
Half-Life 1 got it, which is that if those guys die, oh no.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And TimeSplitters 2, that's a game over.
Yeah.
But they all have good dialogue where they're like, I'll turn off the computer for you.
Yeah.
They run up to the computer and then just blow up.
Some FreeRadical, the ex-GoldenEye guys, know how to make funny scientists.
They're very funny.
They're good at having just scientists run around doing shit with you.
A glorious contribution to the beautiful tapestry that is funny video game scientists.
Yes. Now that's a compilation I want to see. Is a bunch of people drawing those, like the Half-Life 1 scientist in their original polygonal style, then like that would be great.
So on and so forth. Yeah.
The next level is
Aztec.
Of course, it's Aztec.
Yeah. And you might think this is set in the wild, unrecorded times of prehistory. Not so. This is actually set during the 1910s.
Yeah, I guess it needs to be an era where you can have a gun still, right?
It's the British age of discovery, basically. It's like we're going to a bunch of cultured places and robbing them, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're playing as like a British archaeologist who's teamed up with a very, very attractive cave woman. And you're going through this ancient Aztec ruin, solving a bunch of really frustrating puzzles.
Yes, there was a bunch of these pressure plate puzzles and like golems and stuff, and we kept having
to like lead them into like pits and then drop the pits, and it was very frustrating.
Oh my gosh, actually, this is one that I don't think we spent that long on it, but trying to get those golems into the pits was like an odd mix of frustration whenever we'd have to try it again, but it was also kind of cathartic to actually do it. I found it really funny to actually lead them in and be like, I did it, I got him.
There's lots of traps on that level as well, like rolling balls and like crossbow bolts that fire out across if you stand on the pressure plate. Like, it's very good at that kind of stereotypical exploring a strange land type thing, but it is slightly frustrating to actually play.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Still, I think especially compared to the levels that sandwich around it, it's one that I'm like kind of fond of now being separated from it. I think I enjoy when it narrows into the further down parts of the tomb.
You start on the outside of the tomb and then you work your way into the inner chambers, and it becomes more and more difficult as you go, obviously. And it's like it's a really great journey that you go on in such a short period of time.
Yeah, that's how I feel about all the levels. They have to kind of open up into these new things. They're all a microcosm of a single time and biome and level type that it tries to do as much as it can with those environments while they have them. And that's great. That's what gives it that flavor.
And now I get to pierce your childish joy, Connor. I get to stab the very heart of your optimism with the next level on our list. Robot Factory. Robot Factory!
Oh.
So what I will say about Robot Factory is that one of the player characters is this very femininely coded robot who's wearing like a red hood, and I think she's cool.
I forgot about her, and now that you've mentioned that, of course, yes.
And then the other one's this really big, beefy tank of a robot.
Yeah.
It's really good as well.
I think that robot is on the box.
He is on the box. He's on the menu as well.
The menu,
because the menu has this little header at the top, and at the side is always him.
Yeah. No, the box has... I realised I should glance over the box. I believe it's got Harry Tipper and... It's got the Go Robot.
It's got the Go Robot, yeah. That's great.
Harry Tipper, and I've completely forgotten the sunglasses hat guy.
I think it might just be a generic TimeSplitter.
Yeah, that's fair.
To be anyone specific.
I mean, when you play that multiplayer, you have some options where it's like it's Sergeant Bash and whatever, and it's like a bunch of characters,
Dongo,
and they're all identical and have the exact same stats.
Yeah.
Which is
like bodies, I suppose.
Yeah, but
Robot Factory, Connor.
Oh, sorry, I forgot that we were talking about Misery.
Yeah.
This
is all right, I'm gonna do my Super Eye Patch Wolf impression, where it's like Robot Factory is the level that broke us.
I have some strong feelings about AI, and they may or may not be related to Robot Factory.
Exactly. Robot Factory ruined our relationship with robots, with factories, with children.
I used to love the movie Robots. Now I can't
even look at it.
I can't stand the sound of Robin Williams' voice.
It didn't even have the city from Robots in it.
It didn't.
Yeah.
And that's fucked up.
A waste of everyone's time. So let's stop beating around the bush. What made Robot Factory so bad?
It was so long. You had to just fight so much shit. There was like sentry guns everywhere. it's such a long period of level to just go through constant action and be constantly shot at when you have the time splitters structure of, yep, you have your health bar that you can't heal and you better hope you get your armor. It's just a gauntlet, and it just kept going, and it looks really drab and
the game gives you a checkpoint in the middle, but if you do have the misfortune of dying, and you most likely will, and going back to the checkpoint, you start with half health.
Oh yeah, right. There was
a point where you and I just had to restart because we were like, this is actually a unwinnable situation for us.
We want to get to that middle point with more than half our health.
Exactly,
if we have less than that, then
it's just not happening, because so many robots spawn in the robot factory, as you may expect, but it's just it's like ceaseless. It's never ending. It just like it batters you down with how many robots you have to fight, and it's just like, come on, like
you have to go in those little rooms where you have like the weird like. I completely forget what they look like. It's like the glowy orange things you have to shoot, right?
Yeah, they look a little bit like the droids from the Star Wars prequels, I guess.
Yeah, they do. And it was not a good time. This is TimeSplitters at its worst. I think this is my least favorite level.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Robot Factory is a level where we had to turn the difficulty down.
Yeah.
We were just like, we can't do this. Like,
we wanted to, as much as I would like to kind of like say like, oh, you know, I beat it on normal as kind of intended. At the same time, we were wanting to move on to other games we were playing at that time. Yeah. We didn't want TimeSplitters to be a game that we had to come back to repeatedly just to play levels we weren't enjoying.
I think as well, we had been playing Robot Factory for like an hour and a half. We gave it a good try. We really, really wanted to get through it on normal, but we just couldn't make it happen. And it would have taken so much more time to get there.
Yeah, so we did not, unfortunately, unlock the Machine Child as much as we were dreaming of it.
Damn it.
Tell Tiny Tim there'll be no Machine Child this Christmas. He won't have a character he can relate to, which is...
Well, it's a shame, because at the end of the normal campaign, you actually fight the Machine Child and you kill his dumb ass. So we were robbed of that beautiful chance.
We were.
Yeah. It's a shame as well, because Robot Factory is the last actual level. It's the last time period that you go to before you then do the actual campaign story.
Yeah, which is when you go back as Cortez and... I've forgotten.
And girl
Cortez. I've completely forgotten her name.
Yeah, she's barely relevant. She doesn't do anything.
Yes, neither does Cortez. But that's when you just have to conclude the time splitter plot. Yeah. I didn't really like this level either. This is when you're in the ship.
Yeah.
It's not crazy bad or anything. Like, Robot Factory's worse. I think I'd even argue that Atom Smasher was worse. But it was just sort of like, it's a fairly flaccid
It's just
outro.
like a boring space level, and you just walk through it and fight a bunch of boring enemies, and then that's the end, basically.
I think this is a game that very much, its premise is so strong with it, and having its variety so early on is like so fun that you then actually get to what the main, time period thing is. It makes me think of when you watch a season of Doctor Who, you get to one of those finales, and if it's not like a super interesting one, it's just like, we're doing Master and Dalek stuff again.
Yeah, I kind of miss the one-off adventures,
Yeah, that was more fun.
Yeah. But it's a shame as well, because it kind of really does sort of peter out the campaign. Like, Robot Factory delivers the blow, and then the last level finishes off the corpse with a knife. Like, it really doesn't conclude in a satisfying way.
No, I very much agree with that. Like, there's not even that much I can really say about it. I barely remember this final mission.
There's a turret section. If that wets your whistle.
Wow, that's a that's a great bonus.
I think the main detail to know about the final level is that Cortez does eventually succeed in his mission to Ramirez. That's the girl's name. He does succeed in his mission to stop the TimeSplitters from messing up the timeline, but it does come at the cost of Ramirez's life. Sadly, she has to sacrifice herself.
Oh
to
shit!
Let him escape.
So that's why in Future Perfect is just Cortez.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
We lost Ramirez, my favorite character.
Man,
because honestly, throughout the game's 10 levels, the Cortez and Ramirez stuff, it does not matter at all.
No.
It never even comes up.
They're not really characters.
Yeah, whenever you're inhabiting the bodies of Harry Tipper or the Aztec woman and stuff like that, they're just living as they would have lived anyway and doing the stuff they would have done, and then you get a time crystal. That's basically how the whole story goes.
I do like them as designs and everything like that.
Yeah.
This game is entirely aesthetic and flavor and skin. It's not necessarily a deep story or anything like that. It's not.
Which the back of the box is a fucking lie, because it says the game has a complex narrative, which is nowhere near the truth.
It's as complex as a salad bowl,
basically.
Which is that it's varied in terms of how it looks, but it's all sweet in the end.
Exactly.
Except for a few moldy grapes, which I'm going to call the Robot Factory. Yeah, maybe a slightly soft apple in the form of Atom Smasher.
Yeah, Apple Smasher.
Apple Smasher.
Yeah.
It's a shame that we can't say that much more about the ending. It's just a part of the game I've completely forgotten, to be honest.
Nothing of consequence really happens. It doesn't resolve a story that you've been following along this entire time. It's just yep, they won that war, I suppose. So let's move on with our lives.
This has been a very odd episode because we've started in a very different order from usual. Like, we normally do our kind of like storyline and plot and premise and all that kind of thing at the beginning.
Yeah.
We've kind of worked backwards. We wanted to jump into the meat and potatoes of what we like about TimeSplitters first and foremost, going into its multiplayer, its aesthetic, its style, and all these things that mean quite special things to us. Whereas in terms of like the single player, it's a very fun showcase of extra stuff to do in that game.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily say, like, it's not up there as one of my favorite video game campaigns. Absolutely not.
No, definitely not. The more and more the game expects you to engage with its mechanics, the more it becomes clear that they can't really support that kind of game beyond a simple diversion. Like, the campaign is very, very fun, and it's got a lot of great ideas, but TimeSplitters is not a game you play for the campaign. Like, that's just how it is at the end of the day. Like, it doesn't truly matter that much.
And I will clarify and say, I'd rather play it than Geist.
Oh, Connor.
That doesn't even really mean anything.
Breaking my heart here. Is Geist the worst game we've played that we've talked about so far?
That's my thinking, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
If we're talking merits as a game, I guess technically Clock Tower is worse.
You come at me like this. Clock Tower.
I adore Clock Tower. Clock Tower is like a negative 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
where it's like bad, but I adore it. You know. Yeah. I guess there's a few more tidbits I'd want to talk about TimeSplitters, kind of assorted things. Okay. They're more personal, I guess, because...
Well, like we were saying, both of us had these games as children, like when we were young, when you were a young boy and I was a young girl running around, throwing rocks at each other.
Yeah, that's what we did
as
kids. It's informed the way that we think and talk about games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, hey... That's actually true. The way TimeSplitters has shaped my opinions about games. So I do want to get into your more personal part of the story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is another one of those fabled brother games. Like fabled.
For both of us as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I played this with my brother a lot as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like this was what I have here is his copy on his Xbox. This is the one that we would play. At least I think it is, because I'm noticing a big fat GameStation sticker on it.
So this copy of the game has arrived to us exactly how it's been the last however many years.
Yeah.
It has a GameStation, which is a now defunct game retailer in the UK, sticker on it that Connor has never peeled off.
No.
Which is a thing I find really endearing about you. You don't tend to peel off these stickers.
No, because depending on the store, I like them as a kind of microcosm of when these things happen. Like
I remember it was like a small source of conflict between us, because whenever I'd come around to your house when we were young, I would peel off the stickers because it just annoyed me that they were there.
And I'd be like, no, what are you doing? That's the last remnants of Game's old logo. Like, you can't do this to me.
I can't, you're
like
right. It's a piece of history.
Yeah. I found the receipt for this thing in here.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to give you my brother's credit card information, sorry about that.
Man.
But I want to see what this was and when he bought it.
Okay.
Because... Okay. This is not what I thought it was.
Oh, okay.
Because this is dated for 2010. So he must have traded in his copy. We were a trade-in family. He must have traded in his old copy and bought this again. This might have been the day we bumped into him. Do you remember? There was this one time we were in GameStation. We were talking about why we liked being in there while we were getting things, and it just bumped into my brother.
I don't remember that. That was so long ago.
It's very funny. He was buying a bunch of like old stuff because we were getting like 360 things.
What else is on the receipt?
I'll read it out for you. There is TimeSplitters right at the top. Age verified. And then there is Burnout 3, which I've still got.
Yeah.
The Revenge of the Sith. And an Xbox controller.
Man, your brother, truly of impeccable taste.
Oh yeah, well, listen, listen. Sometimes it was a mix. I remember him once telling me that like Metal Gear Solid was an incredible story. It's like the peak story in gaming, and I was
That's
like,
pretty good, yeah.
I was like, well, yeah, but it's also
it's fucking stupid.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I mean, this might be a Patreon exclusive section, but do we want to talk about that specific GameStation?
Oh, sure, yeah. I love that thing.
So, for anyone who's not aware, GameStation was kind of like the unsung underground superhero of the game retail network in the UK. Because our main retailer, our kind of GameStop equivalent, is a shop that's just called Game.
Yeah, a bit confusing to talk about.
Yeah. It's like this big purple store. It's the most prolific, well, it was the most prolific game store in the country. But then they always had game stations, which was like its like scrappy rival, which were like way cooler.
Yeah.
And in Norwich, we have a castle. And next to the castle is a mall that they've built. Yeah, Not into the castle, but it's next to it, basically.
Yeah, it's like the Castle Mall.
Yeah, it's called the Castle Mall. Yeah. And in there, by the very entrance of the place was this GameStation, and I think you and I as children both loved being in there.
Oh yeah,
it's much better than being in game. It's way cooler. It's got a much better vibe. Game was always a bit clinical and a bit, I don't know, gross.
Yeah, I pre-ordered Halo 3 ODST from that GameStation. Like I got it day one with the controller. That
I
came with
bought
it.
my copy of Dead Island from that GameStation.
Oh,
for £50 bloody pounds. The first game I spent £50 on. Not worth it.
No, not at all. That damn trailer got us all.
Yeah, got me good. But that GameStation was eventually, sadly, eventually what happened is that Game bought GameStation, and they never converted them into games, but they did eventually close them all down.
Yeah.
And that GameStation skeleton has haunted the chambers of the Castle Mall for decades.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, the sign has been up, and no one's bought that store in, like, 15 years.
Tell a lie, someone's bought a part of it. It used to be bigger.
Are they petitioning GameStation?
Yeah, they do it to some of the shops. They've done it in Chapelfield now as well. There's like a tiny part of that GameStation became like a beauty clinic, and that's still open.
Oh, great.
But like the rest of it is still there exactly as is. It used to be just covered in stuff to stop you seeing in.
And we used to always say that the people were still there.
Yeah,
like, GameStation was still there. You just couldn't get into it.
Yeah. I think there's like a counter in there that's still there. They
did eventually take down the coverings. And like all the games, obviously, and all the marketing is gone, but the format and the layout was the exact same as it used to be. Which for us, that was like last year, and it was a real like, oh my god. Like,
it took them that long to take it down.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff in Norwich where like really old things have stayed in there forever. Like for 19 years, there was an advert for Spider-Man and Shrek that was on this bridge. Like Shrek 1 and the.
Was that at Hollywood Cinema?
Yeah, Hollywood Cinema. Yeah. Like even when Hollywood Cinema closed down a few years prior, that stayed on there for so long. It got replaced eventually with like a thank you NHS thing, which you know what.
Sure.
Good cause, whatever.
More important than Shrek, maybe.
Maybe a little bit more important than Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, but still.
The guy who did Geist.
Yeah, the guy from Geist, Sam Raimi.
It's a storied career.
But I do miss that GameStation. I kind of miss the games as well.
Yeah, most of the games are gone now. Now Game only exists as a mini store inside another bigger store.
Yeah. Exactly.
In House of Fraser. A lamentable, damned place.
What is it? Game would always be in these big stores. It used to be in Debenhams.
It used to be in Debenhams. I loved that Debenhams. My mum would always go to that Debenhams and leave me in the game to wander the halls. And you just look at like, oh, it's a copy of Knack. That's where I got my Monster Hunter.
Is it? Yeah, my OG smashing. Monster Hunter. That game Debenhams was where I got a bunch of my pre-owned PS2 games. But
I miss that place.
I do too. Same with GameStation, obviously. The
honestly,
true
same with any game store in Norwich. There's like one game now and it sucks.
Yeah. Shout outs to Last Level Games who are still up on Benedict Street.
I got my Chibi Robo amiibo from there.
I nearly bought a copy of Gregory Horror Show from them, but someone sniped it from me the day before I went to get it.
But we'll have to track that guy down and take back what's ours.
We will. Then I will have 2 copies of Gregory Horror Show.
Together we will have 3 copies of Gregory Horror Show.
We will make up 75% of the population of people who have Gregory House.
Gregory Horror.
Look forward to Gregory Horror Show. That is on the list. Yeah. That will happen one day.
That's a seismic event on the list.
That's on the Patreon priority poll.
Fantastic.
Like that's queued up on there.
Please all vote for Gregory Horror Show.
Please vote for Gregory. We want a campaign I want an excuse to talk about Gregory.
Well, we'll get there eventually, dear. Don't worry.
We will. Okay.
We just got to talk about Tulip first.
Oh, Tulip is a golden darling.
Oh, yeah. Tulip is going to be a big day.
For both of us, this is very much a family thing in terms of like bonding with that kind of thing.
Well, it's very unique because we've both brought games to the table or will bring games to the future table that are games from our individual childhoods. So, for instance, Clock Tower 3 is that game for me, and like Spyro and Crash are those games for you.
Yeah.
This is very unique in that it's a game that we both have equally important memories of. Like it's both important. It's important to both of us, which is really rare because we have very different taste in games.
Yeah.
So I just kind of feel like a weird TimeSplitters, right? From my youth. It was so cool.
That was because there were games, because we'd known each other for quite long, there were games that we played together when they came out. The 360 era of things like Halo and a lot of stuff like that was our thing. But
we'd come over to my place and we'd play split screen Modern Warfare.
Yes. When we tried to play Minecraft and had to set up the servers back in Java. But no, TimeSplitters was one just completely separately. We both knew and we both bonded over. That was fantastic.
It's probably why we feel that a lot of you are going to have a similar experience, right? I feel like people from our demographic and our interests who will listen to this podcast will have had some kind of experience with TimeSplitters.
Yeah. I think
honestly, I encourage anyone who has played TimeSplitters to leave us a comment and just say, yeah, that was a part of my childhood too, because I'd be really curious to see how many people would share that kind of experience.
I very much agree. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
But as for like another one I want to talk about, this is entirely like a personal thing. So I have met one of the people who made TimeSplitters.
He's met Mr. TimeSplitter himself.
Mr. TimeSplitter. Yeah. Probably better known for his work on GoldenEye as Dr. Doak.
Doctor now, is it?
Oh, he was always a doctor.
Fantastic.
In GoldenEye, one of the first levels, I believe it's the second level of that game, you have to, as part of one of your objectives, like escort this doctor out or like tell him like to leave. It's just straight up a scan of one of the developers who is Dr. Doak, a real doctor in computing. But he ended up, around the time that I was studying, he ended up becoming someone who was kind of a lecturer, sort of like on our course. And he was great. I love the guy to pieces. I think he might still be at the same university. But he was a really down-to-earth guy. And back in like second year, I was struggling with a bunch of coding. He actually came in and helped me with it. Showed me a bunch of things that I could do in terms of to try and get stuff working. Like I was making like a basic platformer, but I needed help with physics, and bada bing, he came up with this big complex algorithm to help me with that. And that was amazing to be able to code and be like, oh my god, I played TimeSplitters. That was like a game that he did alongside his team. And
yeah, it reminds me of when I was doing my English degree and we got to meet William Shakespeare.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a rare opportunity.
How's he holding up these days?
Not well.
Oh, yeah. Damn, that's a shame. Yeah,
a real shame,
he seems to be in such good health.
Didn't even know he's sick.
That's a weird thing about game development, is that this is still such a young industry that you can know people in these times.
I remember like when Satoru Iwata died, it was like, people don't die in games. We're all so young, we'll live forever.
Yeah, like what's going on?
Yeah.
Mario will live on just as we will.
Like my heart.
Yes, my heart will go on like Mario.
Just like Mario.
That's what that song makes me think of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Connor, for the love of God.
Sorry, that's the Doak alarm.
Just calling you like, you better be saying good things.
you better be talking about me. Yeah. Better be being kind.
But when he threw his phone that time, he didn't flub it. He got it on the
bed. Nice shot. He helped me make this thing as part of my game, and I remember
that game, Super Mario 64.
It's me. I made Mario. I am Shigeru Miyamoto.
I love to think of Shigeru Miyamoto as accepting like a BAFTA for like Best Fellowship Game Award or whatever. And he's like, it wasn't me. I made Mario go.
Oh no, I'm thinking I'm more like one of those kids that interrupts the Game Awards, and I just come on and be like, I did this. I made Mario. and then Jeff Keighley escorts me out with a glare in his face as he's like, what the fuck are you doing?
It's like, you're cutting into our ad time.
Yeah. What are we gonna do? I hide Hydrobot and Gonzo from the Muppets.
I'm gonna hashtag free your skin.
Trust me, we're gonna do our own Game Awards show. Yeah. We're gonna beat Jeff at his own game, and we're gonna celebrate how we made Mario Brothers.
Please look forward to it.
Please do look forward to the List Goes On Awards, which will happen. This is not a joke. So anyway, Dr. Doak.
Yeah, keep telling me your story about how you met a cool guy.
All right. So he helped me code this part of the game.
Yeah.
And I remember I then ran into some other issues while trying to get something else working. I think it might have been Collision. And I had to ask a different tutor to give me a hand with that and just be like, hey, yeah, I'm running into this. I got no idea what's happening here. And he opened up the code. And it was this big mess of like floats, which is like a numerical value, just all strung together. And my tutor had looked at this. And it was the face of a man who has seen this exact thing happen 20 times before, because he just looked at it and was like, I take it Doak helped you out with this one. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it works absolutely fine. He's like, all of this can be done in like 2 functions. And
wow, the disrespect. Dr. David Doak coming under scrutiny.
Listen, it's not even, okay, it wasn't so much him saying that like Doak's way of doing it didn't work. It was that Doak did the exact same thing in a roundabout way, whereas like there was like a cleaner way to do the visual code.
You could optimize it, yeah.
Yeah, which that's the thing, is like programmers kind of work in different ways depending on their era and how they learn. Like, it was just a kind of fun thing to be like, oh my god, I've made a game alongside someone. Well, he didn't make it with me, but like he helped. he advised and he gave a little hand in it, and we ended up showing that game off at like the forum at one of the games festivals in Norwich. I
remember going to that. Yeah,
that was fun. That was when you bought me Fire Emblem Echoes. That was a monumental day.
Yeah, that's when I changed your entire world.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. It's one of many reasons why TimeSplitters is special to me. I mean that's my favorite of like FreeRadical / Rare's kind of like thing, or at least that division of Rare.
Yeah.
I don't know how it compares to Donkey Kong 64. I feel like that's maybe apples and oranges there if I compare those.
Not a good point of comparison.
No,
it was nice. It was good to know that, because the way that I think about TimeSplitters is that I just think about the person that I was when I was playing it, the friendships that I had, our relationship being the kind of anchor point for all that stuff. Because we were still friends. We were very different friends, but we were still friends.
Oh my god, yeah. I mean, I was living in that RTS playing world where like no one else knew what I liked doing.
And this is before I was a beautiful lady and I was in my weird Call of Duty era when I was playing all the big AAA games and stuff.
Oh my god, yeah. You were the person I'd come to play like Left 4 Dead.
Yeah, exactly.
And everything.
Very different time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what's remained consistent throughout all those years, all those changes, the 3 different names that I've had, is that TimeSplitters has always been cool. It will always be cool. It's never like the most pivotal, the most monumental game in the world, but it's always just a nice, warm thing you can return to.
I like that as a way of concluding this as a talk about the games, because I've kind of said a lot already about how this game makes me feel, the kind of standard it sets for how I view games, as well as all these things that I admire about it. It's all of this, and yet it's in a package that isn't perfect.
Yeah.
It isn't future perfect, as one might say. It's wonderful. It's like a warts and all game that I really adore. Like, I think I'd put this among my favorites. I have a lot of favorite games, but I would put this up there.
That's interesting, because I was just thinking about this while you were speaking, but I was thinking about the way that I feel about TimeSplitters too, because I've been talking about it very lovingly over the course of this podcast, and I would return to those words and repeat them and mean them, basically. But this game isn't on my favorites. Like, I have a top 20s game list. It's not even been on like a contender list for that list. But my life is that I go out and I play all these games and I spread my wings and enjoy new things, and I play games and I like them a great deal. But at the end of the day, you can always return home to TimeSplitters 2.
Damn right.
And it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's always there for you.
No, absolutely. It's a time long gone, but it's a time I will relive. I don't care what nobody says. That'll be my crotchety old man retirement home game. I'll be playing until my fingers all fall off. See, despite this adoration, I think it's going to be very interesting to rank this, because
definitely.
When it comes to our criteria, I'm not sure if it's like that high in any of them. But
before we go on to the rankings, there was one more point I wanted to pull upon, which is just the very sad, currently recent closure of FreeRadical by their horrible conglomerate parent company, Embracer.
Oh, yeah. The company that bought just tons of studios and IPs with the idea that they will be able to make money doing them at some point.
The idea is that they were going to be able to sell themselves to a Saudi Arabian oil company for billions of dollars, and then that deal fell through.
Ah!
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And then they had to start making cuts. And so a few days before Christmas, they closed FreeRadical, cancelled TimeSplitters 4 for the 5th time in our lives, and now TimeSplitters is once again no more. Truly cursed.
It truly seems to be.
What I will say, though, is that for the last 10 years or so, there's been a rather elaborate fan project in the work, which is called TimeSplitters Rewind.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Which is basically a bunch of fans who have come together to port TimeSplitters 1, 2, and 3's multiplayer assets and modes into one new game that has modern controls and online multiplayer and stuff like that. And that product has been given the green light by Embracer to continue. So,
okay.
TimeSplitters 2, or TimeSplitters the series, is very much indicative of a certain era. It's very special to a certain kind of people, and those people are going to be the people keeping the game alive. Not suits or people who just buy the IP and do what they want with it, but the people who it means a lot to are going to keep that game going.
Oh man, I mean this is one of those games that is part of that era. It's the era of the fans keep this alive.
Yeah.
I think pretty much like there's loads of games from between 1998 to 2010 sort of like time span that has that really, like especially when it comes to having slightly more flexible tools to be able to modify the game itself. Yeah. If the fans are willing to rebuild the game from the ground up to put all this stuff in, then I thoroughly welcome it.
Yeah.
And honestly, that finishes. I I might drop everything and make a video on that.
There you go. Yeah.
I cover a lot of RTS content on my main channel. I'd like to do more than just that, and this is one close to my heart. I would do.
I think the way I feel about it is that, as we've described, TimeSplitters has this very chaotic, community-led feel, and to me, it feels so much more honest that we just have the fans make a reimagining of what TimeSplitters can be, rather than a product called TimeSplitters 4 that might not even capture those same feelings again.
10-4. I agree with that. Maybe that's the way it has to live on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that feels right somehow.
So, to be the pencil pusher here, listen, I've got a list to keep. I've got
that list must go on.
I've got rankings to do. I've got to figure out where we are in this nebulous number world.
The theme song of The List Goes On, my list will go on.
Do like a MIDI cover of the Where would you say this game would be in your sort of feelings on quality?
On quality, I'm going to say middle high.
I think I'd agree with that because it's very rough around the edges at some point, but I just love how much is in there and how much it works.
Yeah, like, how it's crafted with love, you know?
Yeah, like I'm kind of bordering on high, but I have to really think about some of those single player levels.
Yeah. And like, what's on the high list right now for us, of what we've talked about? So it's Resident Evil 4, Signalis probably.
Total War's definitely. War, yeah. If we're talking just raw quality, I
think in comparison to those games, it doesn't stack up to me.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Yeah. I think I agree with that. In terms of interesting, I'm curious where you'd put that.
I struggle with interesting every single episode because the way that it's defined shifts from game to game.
It does. I feel like there's a big, broad, nebulous way to define interesting, but games get either high or low for very entirely different reasons. You know?
I'm going to split this baby in the most effective way I can. I'm going to go right middle.
Right middle?
I think this game is both interesting and kind of a type, you know? It's very much a game of its era. It's very much playing to those conventions. It's just kind of like, we took the GoldenEye multiplayer and did a massive expansion of it. Like, it doesn't necessarily take any big risks. It doesn't do anything particularly out of character.
If we had covered GoldenEye, or if I was more familiar with the stuff that came before this from FreeRadical, I probably wouldn't rank it very high.
Yeah.
More than likely going to change my mind later, but at this point, I genuinely would put it at high.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably too high. But at this stage, I'm interested in this game.
So I think the disqualifier for me is that I have no desire to cover this game in a more professional sense. Like, I wouldn't want to write an essay about it or do a video. I'm just like, we talked about it here and that's enough for me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think it's just a game I think about, and it's a constant benchmark in the way I compare a lot of games. Yeah. You know? And in terms of fun, that's where I have to put that towards you, because we have the contrast of single player and multiplayer here in terms of fun.
There was a lot of peaks and valleys, because the multiplayer was a great deal of fun, and we actually played a few sessions of Dr. White as well, which I remember quite fondly.
Yeah.
But the campaign was a valley of contrasts. It was some of the most fun and the most interesting levels, and also a great source of frustration for us. You know, like, some of those levels really took a lot out of us, and they weren't that fun to go through. So I'm gonna go middle low.
Middle low.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on the opposite end of where I'd say middle high.
Okay.
Like, sort of right between.
Fight or?
Yeah, sure.
Take us outside.
Yeah, all right, cool. We can do that. Right, so join it next time. But I think that's where I put it, because I do really enjoy this game.
Yeah.
Like, that single player can be kind of a pain in the ass at times, but I just think about that moment to moment with multiplayer, and I have a really good time with it. So that's fine. Like, our rankings can contrast. That's kind of the fun thing about us as people.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, I will continue to just absolutely throw Haunting Ground to the dogs. But
I'm going to get my revenge when we talk about Legend of K.
Oh, when you rank it low and everything?
Yeah. I mean, it's coming, sweetheart. Get ready for it.
I've been building my little Legend of K branded Fallout shelter for a while. The people are going to be so confused. We've built up a mythos around this game, and it's going to be for an entirely uninteresting 6 out of 10
a
platformer.
Very pedestrian platform for the PS2 era. Whereas Haunting Ground had themes.
Yeah, but it doesn't have a cat in it.
It's got a dog in it.
That's close enough to a cat, yeah. That's a good point.
Man.
All right. Haunting Ground, high on everything.
Yes! Cut the recording. Stop the count. Well, Connor, we've come to the end of what is the 9th episode of our blockbuster, world-defining podcast, The List Goes On.
Oh, yeah. Nice round number 9.
Exactly,
this is a real game to celebrate with it. What's the next number after 9?
So the next number after 9, Connor, is 10. It's going to be a very special occasion, our 10th episode.
Oh, no.
And would you agree that a podcast is something akin to a performance?
I think I would. I think when we come to this stage, we really open our hearts and show people our true selves.
Exactly, yeah. So what is most imperative to us, especially at the inauguration of our double-digit episode? is that we do the best performance that we possibly can.
Oh, you're right.
We have to go deep inside ourselves to understand the trauma that has led us here.
We have to cover a play.
Kind of.
Oh.
I've gotten us 2 tickets for a wonderful show that's playing in town next week.
I'm trying to think about what play... Mario 3?
Close. It's like Mario 3. Have you heard of a little man with a wonderful circus called Balan and his Wonder World? Join us next time, loyal viewers, for we will be finally breaking the unholy seal that we have placed over our playthrough of Balan Wonderworld. Connor, it's going to be okay. Balan's going to spin. He's going to break some rocks near you. And then you'll be okay. You can paint again.
You're breaking my heart near me. I can't take this.
Join us next week for the Balan bout.
Thank you for joining us for Balan's bout. We're going to be talking about Balan.
It will be a fun time. We hope you'll join us again. We hope you've enjoyed this episode about TimeSplitters too.
Thank you for joining us for Nights into Dreams. Today I will now go to bed.
It's very late. I have work in the morning.
And try to escape Balan.
But please join us next week for the 5th time I've said that, as we join the incredibly small list of podcasts that makes it to episode 10.
Oh, true, actually. Yeah, there's not that many. Bigger channels than I have done the same.
Exactly. And we've slayed them all with our beautiful words.
That we have. We are the strongest podcast in the world, and we do it through sheer determination and grit. And more importantly, from the support and continued viewing from you all, because we genuinely really enjoy just hearing from you. There's a reason I respond to almost every comment that I can on the podcast. It's just because I like the discussions we have about the games we cover.
Every comment you leave fills my heart with joy. It puts a spring in my step and a song in my heart. So please keep them coming whenever you can, because it's really great to see.
Yeah, thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for supporting me as well. I'm making more stuff on my main channel, ThunderPsyker. There's going to be a lot more coming.
Some of it's good.
Some of it even, yes.
Yeah.
Lunchtime has never been beaten. But also, if you'd like to support us doing this on the show, as well as myself with any of my other personal endeavors, you can find a link to my Patreon in the top comment below, as well as in the video description here. As a quick bonus as well, for big fans of the podcast, all patrons are able to get extended cuts of the podcast.
There's like an additional half an hour of the Warhammer podcast, right?
There is, and there's going to be extended cuts as well for Resident Evil and Haunting Ground. Looking at the recording time of this is going to get a extended cut as well.
We went on a lot of tangents.
We really did, but we hope that you enjoy listening to them if you are looking to support us. So thank you once more again for listening. And hey, if we've managed to get this on Spotify, thank you for listening to us on Spotify. In the meantime, though, have a fantastic day.
You'll soon be tracing with us in a wonder world.
In our wonderland of Balanness, of blandness.
It's definitely not bland.
Oh god, if this podcast has been 2.5 hours, like what's Balan going to be, like 5?
Look forward to the Balan bout.
Look forward to Balan's bout.
Yeah.
Play the Balan outro.
Play us off, Balan.
He's doing a very good rendition of Chicago right now, the nightclub theme. Yeah, make good choices.
Hey, that's my thing. Anyway, make good choices. See you later. Ciao.
Bye.